following program is brought to you by your friends at Podcast One.
It's fall at JCPenney. Time to refresh your closet. This Thursday through Monday, get Levi's lowest prices of the season on 514 straight fit jeans for guys, $36.99. And select Arizona booties for her for $35.99. Plus, save an additional 50% off clearance prices already reduced by 60 to 80%. And get an extra $10 off with your coupon. Hurry in now. JCPenney. Coupon valid 10/5 to 10/9. Levi's and other brands excluded from coupon. Clearance selections vary by store while supplies last. Savings off regular and original prices. Intermediate markdowns may have been taken. See store or jcp.com for details. Season refers to 9/27 to 10/18.
Welcome to RJ Bell's Dream Preview. Weekly winners from his Wise Guy Roundtable. Broadcasting from the pregame.com studios in Las Vegas. Here is RJ Bell.
NFL Week 6 edition with my Wise Guy Roundtable. To my right, Steve Fezzik, the bettor. To my left, Matty Holt, the bookmaker. I'm RJ Bell. And we've got a jam-packed show, action-packed from start to finish. We've got best bets, obviously, every week. We got pros versus Joes. We got one double like. Both of the boys both like the game. We also have two totals. We've got a sharp money game and so much more. First, guys, I want to tell you a little bit about the Dream Preview, how things have been going. I mean, this is literally, I've been in this business over 10 years. I've been in Vegas almost 20. I've never seen anything at pregame.com that we've done have the amount of passion and interest that the Dream Preview, and especially the NFL edition, quite frankly, more. The college edition, the response has been great. For the NFL, it's been, truly unbelievable. Let me give you an example. Couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, so let's call last week and then 2 weeks before that, is the listenership on the show was comparable to CNN in the middle of an afternoon. So flip on CNN on a Thursday randomly, and about the same amount of people was watching CNN that were listened to the Dream Preview NFL edition. In 2 weeks, so that leads to last week, because we're doing this week now, we've doubled the listenership. So, I mean, we can think about that a couple of ways. Doubling the listenership is amazing. Being double CNN is amazing. And I'll be candid, guys. We're proud, but it's because of you, right? This is spreading because of you. You like it and you're sharing it. And what I want to do is personally thank you guys for that and tell you, please keep it up, because I can promise you the amount of time we're spending prepping, the money we spend on equipment, all the expenses associated with this show have to make sense financially as a business. And the more listeners we have, the more money we're able to put into this baby. And the way that you're supporting us, I mean, the sky is the limit. I really, really want to thank you. We're super excited. And hopefully it's just the beginning. All right, guys, let's get to it. First game, we've got Fezzik versus the world. This is where Fez has his power ratings, best in the business, 1 to 32, up at the site every Wednesday. We're taping here on Wednesday afternoon now, and Matty Holt gets a cherry pick. The bookmaker, dastardly bookmaker, gets to cherry pick one he disagrees with. Matty.
So I'm going to go this week with the New York Jets being the same exact power rating as the Cleveland Browns, when we obviously know this can't be true because they just played each other last week. And prior to last week, Fez said the Jets were 1.5 points better than the Browns. That made sense according to the line last week. Jets, a 1.5 point closing favorite on the road at Cleveland, meant, according to the odds of the game, basically the Jets were 3.5, maybe 4 points better than the Jets. And oh yeah, they went on to whip them as well. So Jets win, and they're power rated higher. No way they can be the same in the power ratings, my friend.
Okay, so very compelling point. Let me repeat it, because as you were taking off all this stuff, I think you mixed up the teams one time. So the theory is, listen, Jets were at Cleveland, and the Jets were favored. Home field's 3, so the Jets are clearly better. Let's keep it that simple. And you said it exactly like that, except I think you just misspoke on one team. So here's what's amazing. In the pre-production meeting, I just shake my head, go, boy, Matt, talk about a slam dunk. You got that one. Fez looks up with a smirk and says, oh, I'm going to crush you on this. So I have no idea. I said, save it for the air. I have no idea. Fez is confident. Go.
Well, the beauty of this podcast is I got to be ready to rock on Wednesday. That means I've watched every typically snap in every NFL game. I went back and watched that Jets-Cleveland game, and I watched Cleveland completely dominate the Jets throughout the entire game. They turned it over twice in the red zone, driving with Kaiser, who is not an NFL quarterback. You yourself, Matty, have said you will never wager on the Browns with Kaiser at quarterback.
Now, we played that on the Fox show. Is nationally, when I had my best bet on the Browns, we had you saying, I'll never put $1. And I said that was a square opinion.
So the Jets won the turnover battle. The Jets were up 3-0 at half, and they made a 56-yard field goal. Cleveland missed 2 short field goals. That's why the Jets were ahead. They held on to win. Hogan comes in the second half, and the game's played.
So let's back up a second. Listeners might be saying, well, wait a minute, missed field goals are part of the game. But the theory is all these kickers are pretty much the same, and there's a randomness to field goals.
And not just random.
In any given game.
And I'm supposed to make the 40-yarders, and I missed my 40-yarders, and the Jets made their 56-yarder at the end of the half. Kaiser is horrendous. They outplayed him with Kaiser. Kaiser's not the quarterback for Cleveland anymore. Now the quarterback is a man named Hogan, who, although he shouldn't be a starting quarterback in the NFL, is at least a capable backup. That's a huge upgrade for Cleveland. So that is why Cleveland is a better team this week than they were last week.
Well, there's so many things to dig into. One, whenever I hear Hogan, I think about Ric Flair and him going, Hogan. I wish I had that sound. All right. 2 points. One, and Matty, I think you're going to agree with this. Fezzik's power ratings are not attempting to emulate the consensus opinion or mimic the consensus. He's trying to split the results, not split the action. And that's where you can win, quite frankly, being a contrarian. In the NFL, the difference between the bookmaking line and the betting line is probably the biggest because there's more public bettors and thus any public bias, which is going to be accounted for in the bookmaking line. Let's just say, oh, Kansas City's undefeated. They just covered for me on Monday night, and then it covered on Sunday night, and I love them. Well, assuming there's a bias there, that's going to be in the bookmaking line. It's not going to be in Fezzik's power ratings. So I think just saying that the market said X, and then you said, well, they won. What's one game, right? So
yeah, but this wasn't like it was the Cleveland -1 at home. So this is, the market could be a point off.
You're
this
saying
is
like 4 points.
Jets 1.5 on the road.
So 4 points.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. So, but that's a key distinction that applies here, but the listeners need to understand. Fezzik's power ratings are not about trying to mimic the market. He's trying to tell the truth as he sees it. Not that other people are hiding the truth. They just don't see it as clearly as Fezzik. That's why he can make a living at it. So first of all, you confirm that, right? You're trying to find the truth of these teams.
Exactly. To summarize everyone else's power ratings, summarize who's been the best team.
Not everyone else. There's other bookmakers or other bettors that do power ratings. I think yours are better, but what you're saying, like Saragin or whatever, computer ratings. Go ahead.
Yeah, the computer ratings, much better said. Summarize who's been the best team to date. That's irrelevant.
Based on performance so far, how good, based on the field performance, how good can we extrapolate this team is?
That's what I do going forward. What they do is they go backwards and say the Chiefs, for instance, have been easily the very much best team. They're 4 points better than everyone else. Well, they've been 4 points better. They won't be going forward.
But don't you think, admittedly, you've been low on the Jets all week because this isn't the first time, Matty versus Fez, where we've gone the Jets in this situation. I mean, all season long, you've been a little bit low on the Jets.
Jets are 3-2, and Fezzik has only one team in the league worse than them, the Colts.
Yeah, I've been wrong on the Jets. I had them -11 to start the season. Now I only have them -7. I was clearly wrong on the Jets. But
so a 4-point upgrade.
But I will make a bold statement. I will lay 3-1. That 3-1 that at the end of the year, well, not even the end of the year, in 3 weeks from now, Cleveland will be, Matty, you will have Cleveland rated higher than the Jets.
Well, you can't make a bet with someone who's then his assessment's going to determine the bet.
He's a fair guy.
Well, you can only be so fair.
I'm interested. Let me think about it.
All right. So point one, though, is the difference between what the market tells us and what a handicapper might believe. And thus, really, if you think about it, guys, the only time you ever bet a game is when you disagree with the market, right? If the market was God, then we would all be idiots for laying 110. Most people are losing long-term laying 110, but hopefully they know it's recreation, which is something we say again and again, right? There's professional batters, and then there's recreational batters, and you never have more money coming out of a movie theater than you had coming in, but you can – I love movies, right? I see like 70 a year in the theater. So, but I know long-term I'm probably or certainly going to lose money going to movies. If you think about sports betting like that, but saying, hey, the intellectual pursuit is fun. And hey, who knows, in a couple years, or who knows, if I end up being a prodigy at this in a couple months, I might start being profitable. As long as you are realistic, that's the key. All right. But there's a second point to this too, I think, that's important that you're saying, which is there's been a change with the Browns. So let's segue into the game and talk about that change. So what we've got here, actually, our first game is going to be the Patriots and the Jets. So let's wait, and we'll talk about that Browns quarterback change. But just to kind of put a button on it, you think that Hogan's an upgrade?
Huge upgrade.
How many points? Quantify it.
3.
Holy cow. You agree with that, Matty?
No, to be honest, I was actually surprised it wasn't Cody Kessler coming off the bench, because I thought Cody Kessler had a lot more upside and potential than Kevin Hogan did. I think Kevin Hogan might bring a little bit more stability and consistency to the team, immediately, but I think long-term Cody Kessler had higher upside.
So, but for this week is all we're talking about. Hogan replacement, what is the net effect? Why don't you think?
Kaiser was the worst in the league by far. So anyone, I guess, if he's the very worst I'd seen at starting quarterback, bringing in anyone's got to be an upgrade.
All right. So that's a question. How much?
And psychological, whenever you get rid of someone who's not qualified, the rest of the team plays harder, especially the first game.
Oh, you're saying it's not just playing poorly, almost like with Osweiler last year, right? In the contract, I think, juiced that too.
Exactly. We're paying this guy $12 million a year, and he's not as good as our backup. Why should I bust my butt to play hard?
And I was setting you up to say the ostrich. I thought this would be your one chance this season to talk about the ostrich.
The ostrich is with Denver. We'll get to talk about him eventually.
All right. Well, you think Simeon's going to get benched?
He'll probably get hurt. He got hurt twice last year.
All right. So let's go into the Jets game. So the takeaway, a lot of stuff there, but I think the takeaway is that it is fascinating. Obviously, you see what the market believes each week. And in this case, the two teams that played each other. Fezzik's power ratings have a different goal. And also teams change. And also, I guess there's a third point we didn't reiterate. You thought the Browns outplayed them. So let me ask you this, Fez. Same game next, somehow we had a time machine and you could have the Browns plus 1.5. Do you make a major bet on it?
With Hogan, yeah.
No. But you were kind of making the case that the Browns outplayed the Jets last year or last week.
Yeah, absolutely. They completely. If I can tell you, I'm going to make a statement here. Matty did not watch the game, I don't believe. Am I correct? Because by your comments, I don't think you could have.
We pretty much watch every NFL game.
But you didn't watch this one.
I don't watch any of them isolated. We have like 20 TVs on, and every game's on one of them.
For all the listeners out there, if you get a chance to go on NFL Rewind and you watch it, you'll say, yes, I will bet Cleveland even with Kaiser.
So watching the game, if you had to grade the performance, let's forget quarterback change, let's forget everything. You actually would say that the net effect of that game, relatively, you like the Browns more than the Jets. That you would have possibly upgraded the Browns 0.5 point and kept the Jets flat.
Can we really say that we're going to say, hey, what happens if the Cleveland Browns played the Kansas City Chiefs and they played one up game, and we said, boy, the Kansas City Chiefs outplayed the Cleveland Browns outplayed the Kansas City Chiefs this week. The Browns are better than the Chiefs? We can't just say...
No, that's true, but I think the point we're making here is 3 weeks ago, the Browns were favored at Indianapolis. So just in the 2 weeks, and that was my whole rationale with the Browns, is in 2 weeks they went from being a road favorite, the 3 worst teams all year. And Fez, you and everyone that I respect has had the 49ers a tier up, even though they haven't won yet. But the three worst teams all year, and now the Giants are moving in.
Yeah.
Browns, Jets, and Colts, right? It's been some, without luck, obviously, right? Some variation. The idea that one of those three teams was a road favorite, and then 2 weeks later they were a home underdog again and playing each of the other two, that's saying a 7-point relative swing. I just viscerally felt like that was too much. But we're all kind of saying these teams are, right now Fez has the Browns 7 points worse than an average NFL team, the Jets 7, and the Colts 7.5. So they're bundled right now with his assessment. I think what he's saying is if the only data point is that game last week, that everyone's saying, oh, look, the Jets came in and won on the road. Fez is saying, no, net, relatively, Browns get upgraded based upon that game, even though the scoreboard was a loser for the Browns. Is that a fair way to say it, Fez?
Absolutely. They very clearly outplayed the Jets, but it was a great spot for the Browns, so I got to be careful with that.
Yeah. But most people are saying, oh, this is a sign the Browns might. I heard talk radio guys saying, this Browns team could be one of the worst teams in the last 10 years. I mean, we've jumped to that all of a sudden. And to me, the idea that they were a road favorite 3 weeks ago means we've probably jumped too fast against the Browns. But the thing that kind of is putting the nail in the coffin is if you can't even beat the Jets at home, you must be horrible. And Fez is saying, well, don't overreact to that because really they played relatively better. Now, a lot of new listeners are going to be saying like, wait a minute, they lost. How could they play better? Well, welcome to the professional approach in Vegas.
This will be a recurring theme this week because there were several false winners last week in the NFL.
And this is something we do in every sport, right? You try to find mispricings. The scoreboard, the standings affect people more than anything. When wins and losses are wrong, or let's just say misleading, that's when there's a chance to find real mispricing. Oh, that's pretty good. Misleading finals gives us a chance for mispricing. Okay, so we are looking, though, at this Jets game, and we've got the Patriots on the road, favored by 9.5 at New York. Fez, lean or like?
I lean to the Jets. And a lot of that Cleveland thing was just that I'm very high on Cleveland versus the marketplace. Amazingly, RJ, despite me having the Jets ranked as one of the bottom teams in the NFL and New England through the roof as what I got about number 6 in the NFL right now, right around there. Yeah,
right now you've got New England actually tied for 4th with Denver.
Right. So tied for 4th. I still only have the spread on a neutral site at 10.5. And that's a leap of faith, assuming New England's going to continue to improve. If you look at the raw stats of these two teams, this is amazing. When are you ever going to find a home underdog catching 9.5 that has not just better stats, but much better stats year to date? We're in week 6. It's not week 3.
Okay, so you you lean Jets. So what keeps you from liking them? And that's a new thing I want to approach is, so we've got the lean and like, right? Lean is a smidge. It's a 0.5 point. A like is, I like it. You might even be betting the game. Is what keeps this from a like?
Because my gut says New England's going to be able to score points against the Jets. I don't think the Jets are going to be effective throwing the ball against New England's bad secondary. Their running back Forte is hurt. Their other running back, Powell, is also hurt. So they have cluster injuries at running back that's going to curb what was a pretty good Jet rushing attack.
Okay, so do we agree then that on New England's defense, it's very easy to quote yards per play, and it's shocking. If you look at the defense right now, New England is giving up 6.9 yards per play, which is worse than the NFL.
League average 5.5.
No team in NFL history has ever given up 7 or more yards per play throughout a season. So they're historically bad so far. They did obviously look better last Thursday. And Mike Lombardi, my go-to with the Pats, he said, listen, I don't know what Belichick can do from Sunday to Thursday. So we might see big problems. Well, we didn't. But in those 10 days, I can promise you this defense is going to get better. So for me, the fact they got better in a couple of days, now we could say Winston or whatever, who knows, because people are starting to get sour on Jameis. But the fact of the matter is, I think that I think there's a real upside with the Pats defense right now.
And I think those 10 days, Matty, what do you think about this? If there's one team that isn't going to get their time off that other teams would get, it'd be the Patriots. They're probably going to work 10 straight days, right?
Yeah, and look, this is where I played my total play here. I played this game under, and who would have ever thought, on a whole board full of totals, you'd look to take a New England Patriots game this year and bet the total under. But for a lot of the reasons you just described, I think scoring is going to be low in this game. Historically, New England struggles on offense versus the Jets, more so, if not at least as much as any other team. They have trouble going to New York and scoring. And now you have Tom Brady with an injured shoulder. While he's going to play this week, and that's fine, they're probably going to be a little bit more cautious with Brady and his 5-step drops and longer passes than they normally would because they don't want him getting hit a ton. You have to know, like RJ said, that with 10 days of preparation, Bill Belichick's going to have improvements on this defense, and they're a little healthier. This was not just a defense playing really badly, but it was also a banged-up defense.
Pursuant to your under, Brady missed practice Tuesday. Normally that wouldn't be a big deal, but he had 4 days after the game. So having that shoulder injury that was disclosed is another reason probably he's going to play. They'll probably run the ball more.
And that's interesting. It's run the ball more if you have a big, a 10-point lead where maybe you press it. Also, your passes, you said maybe not the longer drops. And to me, that would be at least a reason to look towards the Jets. But I agree with you, Fez, and I think this is the last point on this game. Belichick or no Belichick, the weakness of the Patriots on defense is more the secondary. Do we agree with that?
Absolutely.
So then the question becomes, can the Jets exploit it? And answer is probably no. Pregame.com, I'm RJ Bell with Matty Holt, the bookmaker, Steve Fezzik, the bettor. Okay, game number 2. This is our Colin Cowherd versus Steve Fezzik. Fezzik versus the world. Here we are. It's one thing to take on Matty Holt. Now it's one of the biggest sports media guys in the world. I can tell you something, Fez. Colin's been busting my chops on air and off now. I told him on our podcast, which I do with Colin every Saturday morning. It's released 6 a.m. We tape it on Fridays. Is his Blazing Five, my wise guys, through me, break it down every week. We do like 25 minutes, a deep dive or a deep dive. And I told him, check out Fox National Radio Saturday night. We're going to spend 10 minutes killing Colin. Little alliteration there. And then when the Steelers got blown out as over a touchdown favorite, Colin's texting. And then he leads. Imagine this. He has his Colin was right, Colin was wrong. Well, what was his first one about the Steelers? And on Twitter, people were killing me. So, Fez, you came in and said, I am sticking by it. So, if Colin has the Steelers out of his top 10, where do you have the Steelers ranked?
I have them ranked number 6. Yes, they took a torpedo across the bow, but I'm not going to jump into the life raft. I'm going to bail. The ship's going to be fine. Big Ben had his worst game I've ever seen him have. 5 interceptions, 2 run back for touchdowns. I refuse to believe suddenly cannot play effectively in the NFL. We all have bad days. Well, he had the worst day he's ever had. That's the sole reason Pittsburgh was bad. And if he plays that way again, I'll be wrong. I don't think he will play that way again.
I think the 2 hardest things for me as a bookmaker and you as a bettor, are to gauge quarterbacks are when a quarterback's getting to that time when they need to actually not be playing quarterback anymore, and how do you grade them as the elder statesman?
Like the 35-year-old that shouldn't be at the bar?
Sure. Like Eli Manning. Is Eli Manning and Carson Palmer still, effective NFL quarterbacks? And the other one is injured quarterbacks. How do you judge a quarterback who's supposedly 70% or 65%? Those are really hard things from both sides of the counter. But with Ben Roethlisberger, it's not that he's too old, but he's been talking about retiring for a while, and this feels like a guy who doesn't necessarily, with all of his heart, want to play football anymore.
I think, listen, I'm a big fan of Colin. I've been lucky enough to get to know him a little bit personally. I think on the air, he's the best. A lot of people don't like his, socioeconomic stuff. This guy had this upbringing and now we're seeing it on the field. I think that's dangerous stuff in a PC world, but I think there's obviously some truth to some of it. The question is I don't know if it's 50% has some truth or 80%, but I'm not sure which 50 or 80 it is. But I think there's something to this, right? Your upbringing affects things. Brady hired a millennial consultant in the offseason. Now, who knows? Did he spend $20K on it or $50K? But it wasn't $500, right? So he spent like as much as a car probably for someone to say, okay, here's the way the millennials think. Here's some of the music. Like he's actually listening to today's music because he wants to relate to the 22-year-olds in the locker room. Because think about that. I mean, Brady's still seeing, he's Brady, right? But he's 40. He's got kids. He's got a supermodel wife. He's got a life that I don't care if you're in the NFL or not, right? The defensive linemen for the Patriots and Brady have very little in common. He's making that effort. Big Ben's not quite 40, but that disparity between a almost 35-year-old and how old is Big Ben? Is he 35 yet?
I think he is 35.
Really? Is and a 22-year-old, it's a big difference. And my sense is that and again, I'm a Steeler fan, so I'm not sure I'm right, but I follow this closely. My sense is that Tomlin is a young player's coach. And if you actually look at Big Ben the last maybe 2 years, he's had a couple of comments that seem to throw Tomlin under the bus. And I think the Bears game with the national anthem and all that was a big part of it, where he's after saying, I think I wish we had done this another way. Like, why say that, right? Because and we're talking about it now, and most media outlets were. So my sense is he's getting older. He feels a disconnect with the players. It's not only on the field he feels older, but disconnect with the players generationally, Big Ben. And also a sense that Tomlin's not his guy, that Tomlin's, the guys that Big Ben feels disconnected to, he's their guy, Tomlin is. And to me, I would not be surprised if he retires at the end of this year. And if you're assuming that there's going to be, a big bounce back and like, in the NFL, typically you get embarrassed, you bounce back. I think that's the case the next week. I think that's the case unless the team has internal strife. And I'm not sure if there's not internal strife here. Matty, what's the age?
And
I thought you were nodding like you had it.
Yeah, no, I'm still looking for the age right now. But the other problem with this, besides the Ben Roethlisberger thing, for me is this defense. And, the Jacksonville Jaguars players actually said it best. They said this is the easiest offense they had to prepare for all year long because the defensive coordinator on video every single game runs all these crossing patterns over and over and over again. And the tight end, Jesse James for Pittsburgh, came out and made the same complaint. Hey, basically our game planning it's very predictable. And Jacksonville said, we just left guys in the middle because we know they're going to run crossing patterns over the middle. We left guys in the middle, and guess what? Ben threw 5 interceptions. And guess what? All these teams are doing it this year. And this isn't a Pittsburgh offense putting up 30 or 40 on anyone. This is a Pittsburgh offense that a lot of teams around the league say is easier to game plan for than ever before.
Now that, I hadn't heard that. And it makes sense because remember, I was not a big Cowher guy. I'm such a big Steeler fan that when they won the Super Bowl in 2005 and Cowher had one more year left and he knew he was out the door and he let that team go 8-8 the next year. It's like you only get a couple of times a decade if you're lucky that you're competitive for a Super Bowl. And when you're the defending champions, you don't lose anyone but the bus, who didn't really make a huge difference that last year. You should be making the playoffs the next year. And Cowher, and again, we can sit and blame Cowher or not, right? Maybe it's being unfair, but so that I have a little lingering problem with that as a fan, and I'm speaking as a fan now. But Cowher had him buttoned up, right? No doubt about that. And also Dick LeBeau was, and again, listen, LeBeau's getting old, right? We can look at Tennessee, and he is a defensive genius. And 10 years ago, he was actively a genius on defense. I like Butler in theory. I don't know enough to know the corner should press here or, cover 3 this or that. But it just strikes me, Tomlin is not an intellectual. Now, I'm not saying he's not smart. You can have a genius IQ and not be an intellectual, or you can literally be below average in intelligence and be an intellectual, right? It's someone who likes to think and read and deep dive. Like the Patriots, if they have to play in London, they'll go get a PhD to write a 30-page paper about it because Belichick's an intellectual. I'm not saying that there isn't a place for the raw and the gut and the emotional that Tomlin does. But listen, a guy like Terry Bradshaw, remember last year, saying Tomlin isn't a great coach. In fact, he goes, I don't even know if he's a good coach. And Bradshaw said, what does he do? Now, again, I don't know if there's some internal thing with Pittsburgh, but it's like, that's an interesting question, right? He's not active. Go ahead, Fez, jump in.
I can't help but thinking we're being a little bit square here because of the order of the Pittsburgh games. They're 3-2, 3 of their games on the road. They could be 4-1. They lost in overtime against Chicago. If this had just been their opener, if they'd lost to Jacksonville in the opener, our narrative would be completely different. But because that's
2 out of 3 weeks, if you lose as a touchdown favorite, that doesn't happen very often.
And we have to say that who would have thought going into that game last week that the Jacksonville Jaguars were averaging more yards per play on offense than the vaunted Pittsburgh Steelers? Fact.
Well, the overall stats are fine for the Steelers.
On offense?
The offense is below average at 5. The defense is elite.
The offense right now is 23rd in the NFL yards per play.
What's their defense? Third? Yeah, so their defense has been way better than expected. The offense has been way worse.
Exactly.
And I go back to, I just can't believe with all those weapons that they got 6 yards per play for the last 3 years. And now after 5 data points, I'm like, oh, Ben can't throw it anymore.
I'll tell you this. I probably said this once or twice on the radio. I thought on paper Pittsburgh could have the best offense of the last 10 years. Like since that Patriots offense with Randy Moss, maybe I'm missing a team or two. But and again, I'm a big Martavius Bryant guy, at least in theory. I mean, Big Ben, in theory, is a top 5 or 7 quarterback still. Now, the age is a question mark, but let's say if he didn't get old, he's top 5, top 7 at worst. Le'Veon Bell's top 5 at worst. Brown, I think, is the best receiver, but he's top 5 at worst. And as a second receiver, I think Bryant is certainly top 10 in the league. So, an offensive line, I think Pittsburgh's top 5, top 7 at worst. How in the heck aren't you dominating?
Well, Bell didn't play in preseason.
Exactly.
It wasn't ready to go the first 3 weeks.
And also, look, I mean, we get to go. The glory of being able to rewatch games now is that you could rewatch an entire game without commercials and fast forwarding.
But you didn't watch the Browns.
No, but I rewatched Pittsburgh again because after the Jacksonville defender said that and a Pittsburgh offensive player and tight end Jesse James confirmed it, I said, I want to see it. So I went to Pro Football Focus and looked at what they showed, and I went and rewatched the games. And it's true. If you watch all these Pittsburgh games, they run the same exact crossing routes time after time. And they
did that just get discovered?
No, they did it last year. So what do teams say? So they go, okay, this is what Pittsburgh did last year. This is the video we have. Let's prepare for it. And Pittsburgh is still doing it. You have to game plan each week. And even the Pittsburgh players are saying our game plan is too predictable.
Matty is spot on. All those interceptions were crossing patterns. There were 3 Jaguars around the ball. Big Ben threw 8 passes into coverage and completed 1 to a Pittsburgh player and 4 to Jaguars.
To close on this, here's what I'll say is I am always very cautious. Like I look on Twitter and I'll say, oh, this is a sharp game. And someone on Twitter will go, no, it's not sharp. And I'll look and I go, who is this? And they get like 30 followers and they are a mechanic, right? So they should have enough self-awareness not to be sure. They could make the case they're right. They could say, I don't think that's sharp, but you can't be sure I'm wrong. Let's at least start there. If you're a mechanic, or if you're a president of a company, right? It's not about being, how much you make a year. It's about, is this your profession? I'm not a professional football coach. Either are you, Matty Holt, bookmaker, either are you, Steve Fezzik, bettor. I can't really grade how they're doing schematically. Now, when players are talking about, you got to take that, to mean something.
But it's my job to make odds, and it's his job to bet on them. So but
your ability to assess X's and O's like a coach, I can look at
a simple thing that say, hey, the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't changing their offensive game plan from week to week.
Perhaps. And all I'm saying is I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I'm not going to go as far as you guys, but I am going to say that the fact that the Steelers seem to be an anti-intellectual organization, that as we keep moving away from what Cowher established, I mean, listen, the Steelers haven't made the Super Bowl since 2010. If you have Big Ben, right, you should be making
the number one receiver, arguably the number one back, arguably a top 10 line.
Yeah, I mean, that's more the last year or two, and they did make the championship game, give them credit. But, I mean, it's hard to say, and the Steelers haven't won a Super Bowl since 2008. Now, you can say, oh, Browns haven't won a Super Bowl since whenever, never, but the point I'm making is when you have Big Ben and you have the Steelers organization and you don't make a Super Bowl in all that time, you don't win one in that time, it's hard to exalt Tomlin too much, right? And the two he did win was with all of Cowher's players. So, hey, listen, I hope for the sake of the Steelers, as a fan, that Tomlin does better. I think it's very possible, though, Tomlin's overrated as a coach. Especially, we know game management he is, but I think especially now schematically, I'm just not sure, because if you're not intellectual yourself, you don't hire an intellectual, right? Any business book you read, people tend to hire the personality trait. Like I'm a straight, I guess I am on the podcast too, but in business, I've had a lot of people that come and go, God, RJ's tough. He's tough on me. And when we hire people now, I literally say, listen, if I think you're effing up, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it with respect, but you're going to hear it with vigor. And, if you can't handle that, you shouldn't be here. And some people don't, they leave and, we'll email them and they'll be like, yeah, I'm probably not interested. And it's better to figure that out now, right? But when someone comes in and they do the same thing, they're a straight talker, I want to hire them because to me, that's my personality. I think that's the right way to do things. Tomlin's not an intellectual. It doesn't strike me that Butler is an intellectual defensive guy, and it doesn't strike me the OC is necessarily, intellectual. So, again, I'm not saying they're not smart. So, who knows? It's interesting conversation.
I think one of the interesting things about this game that we haven't talked about yet, and we talk about injuries this week that could really impact it, both sides of the ball here for Kansas City. Justin Houston on defense, questionable. Travis Kelce on offense, questionable. They've been two of the most important players for the Kansas City Chiefs all season long.
All right, so let's get into the game quickly. And obviously, we've done some asides here, and that's what people love. Chiefs now 4.5, open three.
I bet that 3, it was gone in 20 seconds.
All right, 5 dimes, it wasn't gone in 20 seconds. Where'd you bet it at?
I actually bet the Westgate opened at 2.5 and at 3, and I popped it twice.
The Westgate opened at 2.5?
Minus 20.
Wow. What was the rationale there?
You have to ask them.
I'd be interested to hear if there's an answer to that. But either way, the whole internet was shocked because when people were busted on me about Colin, what Colin was saying is, I said, okay, who's the best team? Oh, the Chiefs. Okay, well, the Chiefs are home. What's home field? 3. Okay, what's the opening line? Or what's the line currently? When we were talking contemporaneously, and it was 3. It was like, these are even teams. And we do the lines for the AP before there's any lines in the world. And Fez is one of the main drivers on that. And we opened the game at 3.5. And when it opened 3, I'm like, wow, we were even below, but it got to 3.5 pretty quick. But 5 dimes had it up for a while. And
that difference between 3 and 3.5 is obviously enormous. It's not just like a normal half point.
Yeah. So, but we're up to 4.5 now. Fez, lean or like?
I lean to the Steelers. I actually
hold on. You like the Steelers?
I like the Steelers. Correction. I like the Steelers. We talked a lot about the Steelers.
Or you can pull it back. If
no,
you
I like them even more.
Wait. I just talked for 10 minutes about how I'm concerned about the Steelers, and you like them more?
I have similar concerns, but I know they'll be completely emotionally invested, and that's so important to handicap the whole team. Embarrassment, RJ. You never want to bet against a team that was publicly embarrassed. But what Matty was saying, look at these Kansas City injuries. Barry went out, one of their best defenders before the season started. Now they have another defender hurt. 3 of their top 4 receivers are injured. So they got Tyreek Hill. Remember, Charlie checked down. Alex Smith has been going deep left and right. Well, his number 2 wide receiver is out. Kelce, his stud tight end, is in concussion protocol, and his number 3 wide receiver is questionable. So the Chiefs have been easily the best team year to date in the NFL. Not with these injuries, they aren't.
I do agree, and I just said the Justin Houston and Travis Kelce injuries are maybe the 2 biggest factors.
You agree with what? Because you've got a lean on the Chiefs.
I do. He said that the injuries are causing issues, and they are causing me pause. This would have been a like situation on Kansas City for me had it not been for those injuries, because Justin Houston, such a disruptive force on the defensive side of the ball, and Travis Kelce, so important to their passing game. But I will say this. People have said it to me both on Pittsburgh and against Pittsburgh that their game planning on the offensive side of the ball might be the most predictable in the league. And I went back and watched it for myself, and it looks the same every single week. Seems ineffective. Seems easy to game plan for. I don't think Big Ben's heart is totally into it right now. I cannot bet on the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, period.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, on Adam Carolla, one of my 2 picks was the Chiefs at 4. And I just think we don't know about Big Ben right now. So I agree with Fez. Typically, I don't want to fade a team that got embarrassed, but I'm not sure if that – you can only have one emotion at a time, like one intense emotion at a time. You can't laugh and cry. Or Bruce has a great line that says, you could laugh and cry in a single sound. That was on his first time. That's pretty good. Bruce is pretty good, I think. Faz, you're a big Bruce fan. It's funny. We never talk. We've known each other very well now for like 4 years. And he had never, or over 4, he had never talked about Springsteen. And Bruce came up and he started taking off like Innocent to East Street Shuffle. He's talking about New York City Serenade. I mean, deep knowledge.
Big Ben, crawl into my ambulance. Your pulse is getting weak.
Same song for you. I love it. See? I mean, that shocked me. But to me, you can have one big emotion at a time. And I think the Steelers' big emotion is infighting right now. Is there something going on in there? Because last thing, I mean, I know we've gone long in this, but you said, if the game order was different. How often do you go as a 7-point road favorite and lose? And then and you would think, well, you're not going to lose as a big favor for a while because you're going to be in time. It's not lose against the Jags. It's get blown out at home against the Jags.
What happened to the Patriots twice already this year?
They got blown out by whom?
Kansas City crushed them.
Oh, my God.
Wait a
New
minute. England had the lead in the fourth quarter.
Fair enough.
Seriously.
Against the spread, Kansas City crushed them.
Any team who has the lead in the fourth quarter isn't getting blown out.
Fair enough.
I mean, the case could be made, and it was made after that game, is one completion. Pats probably win that game at a certain point. I think Gronk dropped. I can't remember.
I'll retract that statement.
All right. Good. That's good. But the point I'm making is it feels like this is more than one bad game. It feels like and looking back in hindsight, beating the Browns by, 3 in week 1, that looks bad.
They won by 14 against the Browns. They had 3 blowout wins.
The Steelers?
Yeah, 24-10.
You're high as a kite.
Am I mixing up my game?
Yeah.
Dude.
I'm just gonna. You know what? Let me lower my Steelers down to a lead. You're right. No, they got that in the back door. Kaiser got them in the back door. They're down 11.
Yeah,
and they made it 3. You're absolutely right. Let's only lean with the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean. And I love that, right? The theory is we're here to talk these games out. If the answers are obvious, this could be a short podcast. But I do think looking at that game, now listen, the Ravens are the Ravens, right? So that was a great win, meaning Pittsburgh's going to play them hard. No emotion's going to trump that. But otherwise, I don't know.
And to your point, look, normally sharp action always comes on a team that's supposed to be good off an embarrassing spot. All the sharp money's on Kansas City early in the week thus far. Sharp players don't want to back the Steelers right now.
It's an interesting point. I mean, it did go from 3, and like you said, you played. That's interesting. So you're saying you like Pittsburgh, but you had a strong feeling this line was going up, and you could then middle it back.
Yeah, I knew 3 was way too low, given that Jacksonville.
Well, it can't be way too low if we opened up for AP at 3.5.
Yeah, well, that's a 20-cent difference. Yeah. So, and I got -3 at even money, so it was a no-brainer to bet that.
So you had -3 at even money.
And because of the I laid 2.5 -20, and they moved to -3 even. So, same thing. I bet it again.
So you'll likely buy it back though, because you're leaning Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. I'll get level on the game.
So just for the official tally out there, though, we've moved it to just the lean, or Fez has just the lean. Okay. Game number 3, we call them the public pounder game. This is the game the public's just going hog wild. Up at pregame.com, you can get the bet splits. 90% of the tickets so far on Wednesday on the Packers. Packers favored by 3 at Minnesota. Fez, lean or like?
I like the Vikings. I don't really care who's going to quarterback them. I don't think it matters that much. Healthy.
So let's say this. A couple weeks ago, Bradford was worth 3.5 points, and it went to 3. We're now down at the point it doesn't matter. Explain.
Yeah, because when we tried to play, he played the first half, And he was so ineffective, and he was such a statue. He's not mobile to begin with, that even the announcers were saying, what are they doing? They can't leave him out there. He's going to get killed. He can't play at all. I'm going to assume this is a lingering injury he's had for quite some time. He was out for a couple of weeks. It's not going to be much better. So I don't see any difference between Bradford or Keenum. I have the Vikings middle of the road, average team, RJ, rating of a 0, but they're home, and they have a big home field advantage. And one thing we learned about Green Bay only wins half of their road games. So how in the heck can they be laying 3.5 or even 3 against an average team on the road?
That's a great way to think about it, because we have a stat from 2012 on. Green Bay on the road is below, I think even after the Dallas one, they're still below 5. I think they were 3 games below last time I looked. Okay, but right around 500, a little below. So over the course of all those years, you've played a lot of good teams on the road, a lot of bad teams on the road. It's all going to even out over 6+ years. So if you're playing a Vikings team, you have to believe the Vikings are significantly below average in order for them to be a 3-point home underdog. If a team is barely 500, in theory, a 500 team against a 500 team, an average team, if you're 500 on the road and you're playing an average home team, the line should be pick 'em, right? So that's a fascinating approach. Matt, what's your leaner like?
There's always a big boost by winning the highest profile of game of the week prior, especially from the public. And the Green Bay Packers absolutely did that last week by winning that dramatic shootout, scoring that touchdown with under 30 seconds left to beat the Dallas Cowboys last week on national television. That always buys you a little extra public money the next week. We're seeing it show up on the Green Bay Packers already this week. I think Case Keenum looked really sharp in the second half of that game. He looked really sharp blowing out Tampa Bay earlier this year. I think assuming Case Keenum's going to play, because Bradford is not nowhere near 100% yet. I think this Minnesota Vikings defense is a terror at home, and that Green Bay injury report just can't get better. Suddenly, Jordy Nelson's on the injury report this week. Ty Montgomery's still questionable. I think this has to be a spot where you play Minnesota or pass.
Very interesting. So lean on Minnesota for Matty. Last thing, because I want to be clear. If Bradford were 100%, he'd still be 3 points better than Keenum, because Keenum's probably been upgraded a little bit.
2.5 to 3. Yes.
All right. So what we're saying is the line's out because the bookmakers like Matty are saying, listen, a hobbled Bradford versus Keenum, there's really no difference. So we can put a line out regardless, but don't mistake that there's no difference if Bradford is 100%. There is. Okay. Next game. Our fourth game. We've got, all right, here's what we're doing, guys. We've got 3 games in a row. We're going to go rapid fire because these are games. The first one, it's a double pass. Now, the boys only get 1 pass a week each, and they both pass the same games. And it shows you if a line is right, there's not value, and they're not going to force it. In fact, I love that because you could think, oh, let's not both pass this one. No, we're giving you their honest opinion regardless. I'll make it entertaining. You guys just give the honest opinions because you're the true experts out there. Deep insight behind the counter and in front of the counter. But let's do the number one factor in the game, just so people will have some nuggets for this. It's Tampa Bay, Arizona. Tampa Bay on the road, favored by 2. Fez.
Number one factor, Carson Palmer's been sacked 17 times. And as we predicted at the beginning of the year, he is regressing week by week. I don't trust him at all. Last week, he threw 3 balls that should have been intercepted by the Eagles that were dropped. Arizona lost that game 7-34, RJ. It could have been even worse. I want no part of Arizona.
Okay, so what's the theory on pressure? He's older. Why does he get worse? Because he's taking hits? He's getting happy feet? What is it?
His O-line cannot protect him. He's unable to scramble like a Russell Wilson, and he's still...
But why is that worse now than it was beginning of the year?
They don't have David Johnson to take the pressure off him with the run game.
Okay, but the point you were making, because you said it on one of the early pods, is you think the Palmer might regress throughout the year, and my sense, if I'm remembering what you said at the time, is as you keep taking those hits, like they always say, the film guys, when the quarterback starts looking at his feet, he's done because he's not looking downfield, and when you start feeling that phantom pressure, that the quarterbacks have trouble performing, and thus you start taking a lot of hits, I think Palmer start to get the happy feet.
And be injured. And he still likes to throw the ball deep downfield when he shouldn't. And remember, how bad is that Arizona rushing game? David Johnson was arguably the best running back in the league, or tied for it. The backup Johnson has been so bad. They have traded for Adrian Peterson now to be their starting running back. This team has no rushing attack.
And that's no upgrade. I mean, that doesn't move the Vegas needle at all.
In fact, it hurts this week, in my opinion, because they traded Chris Johnson. Now you get it back. If nothing else, Chris Johnson knew the playbook, knew the blocking schemes, and had some familiarity with Carson Palmer. Now you bring in a running back who's not known to be able to catch the ball, doesn't know the playbook, no familiarity with the quarterback. It's going to be hard to catch up in 1 week to all the plays. Adrian Peterson's actually a detriment to this offense this week.
That was good. Now, in fact, that was strong. A lot of listeners are probably screaming at their, I guess not radio, their iPhone, why are you passing? So what is keeping us off the Bucks?
I just don't trust Jameis Winston on the road.
So you wouldn't play the Bucks on the road in any case? I mean, any reasonable line.
No, because I still think Arizona's defense, other than last week, they've kept them in a lot of games this year.
So why not look at the under?
And I follow this stat on Pro Football Focus, which is passes that should be intercepted but aren't. And Jameis Winston leads the league in passes that should be intercepted, that are so bad they should be intercepted, but don't actually get intercepted. And we all know you lose the turnover battle, you lose the game. For that reason, I had to pass.
Do we look at the under in this game, right? If we trust the Arizona defense, we think Arizona's offense is going to be even worse for a short period of time because of this trade. Winston, we don't trust on the road. We're getting 45.5.
Carson Palmer just keeps chucking the ball into traffic, though he doesn't take sacks. That's bad for the under.
So doesn't Jameis.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's it, because you think INT, you think lack of offense, but it can lead, obviously, to scoring. Okay. Next game, we got 2 games now, no line as of Wednesday. So we're just going to define why there's no line and start with Matty on these. And Fez, you can counterpunch. Define why there's no line and give some values for the quarterbacks that may or may not play. So Chargers, Raiders, actually CG Technology, the only place in Vegas, or is there anywhere offshore? This is great. Only place in the world with a line, VP Matty Holt. So you guys have Raiders?
So we have Raiders -3, and the thinking there when we put the number was out is right now, according to all the credible injury reports, Derek Carr is going to play. And despite the fact that we hung the number at 3 and Derek Carr is listed as probable, people aren't betting it. So that makes us feel comfortable. Even if Derek Carr is not going to play, this line's not going to ever flip to San Diego being a favorite. So we felt fairly comfortable at 3 either way, and I'll tell you, we haven't taken sharp action either way in this game. The little bit of action we did take was on the Chargers still, even with Derek Carr probable at Oakland -3.
Fez, so before in pre-production, you had Carr worth about 5 points.
Yeah, he should be worth 6, but I will assume if he plays, he's not quite 100%. Maybe he's 85%, so what's 83% of 6 is 5? Close enough. 5-point difference between him and Manuel, who looked terrible, I might add, last game. I do think the Carr is going to play. So if you like the Chargers, and the book on the Chargers is, hey, play every Charger game, play the road team, right? Because they have no home field advantage. I think it will go up to 4 when Carr gets announced in. And at that point, I'll probably start leaning to the Chargers.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's just, and we talk about this often, so I won't belabor the point. It's just like if there's a merger and if the stock goes to 60, if it goes through 50 before it was announced, if it's a 50% chance, it's going to be at 55. If it's a 90% chance, it's at 59. And then once the merger comes through, the gap closes. So you're saying we've got this line up with a certain assumption about Carr, and when that becomes 100%, there's going to be a little bit of a move. And so in a way, you're letting people bet if Carr's going to play here, right?
That's right.
Is pretty much what the bet is, which I love that kind of bookmaking, right? Because it makes a ton of sense. Is if you feel like you can quantify A and B, why not put it up? But
and you know what's amazing about this? We do this all the time. Go look on your screens for all of you who have Odd Screen that you watch.
Or pregame.com.
Or pregame.com. Yeah, look at pregame.com, free Odd Screen. You'll see that we're the only one with that lineup. And what's amazing is people always want a second number somewhere to make them feel good about something. until someone else puts a number up, it's surprising how little action we'll take on this game.
Let's take a little detour and go behind the scenes in a casino. So, Matty, you know that listen, Cantor, CG Technology, which was the new name, or is the new name, is you guys came in like gangbusters and were aggressive and doing a ton of stuff that I loved, quite frankly. And I loved the way that Cantor was bringing up the game of the other books, right? It's like we've all seen the high school shows where, or a movie or whatever, is like everyone's kind of lackadaisical and then someone shows up. In fact, Beverly Hills 90210 was that, right? They were all there, Steve Sanders and the crew, but then the Walshes showed up and topsy-turvy, Dylan McKay and the whole thing. Yes, I was a fan. So when you think about what the legacy books were thinking then, what they're thinking now, as you guys have had to slow down for various reasons with some of the aggressiveness, why wouldn't they say, let's just say they know, forget this game for a minute. Let's just say they know, okay, if this quarterback plays, line should be 7. If he doesn't play, the line should be 4. And by all accounts, it's a 50% chance he's going to play. So you do the math because 7's a key number, right? You're going to go somewhere in there. You put that baby up and let people bet on if he's going to play or not, because if you're right about that, you're going to have a good number regardless. You could hedge if you can try to middle it if you want. Now, I get the fear someone's going to know something they don't, and there's going to be a couple limit bets in that get a 2 or 2.5 point edge. Is that the only thing stopping them?
I guess so. And it's,
well, I mean, you talk to these guys. I mean, and you guys don't always do this either. What
people won't admit, most sports book operators, is very few of them actually have an odds team that they feel comfortable with being the only number out in the marketplace. And number 2 is most of them won't set openers. There's only a handful of books in the entire world that will be on the screen with a line out that nobody else has, and we happen to be one of them, and we happen to be the only one in Las Vegas.
You know, I finished that Scott Shetler book from the Stardust. He was the guy after Lefty. I think there might have been one person in between. And obviously that was based on, or the book and the movie Casino based on Lefty. And De Niro played him, Ace, in the movie. Is the idea, you know, he is so negative about current bookmakers. He wrote this book like in 11 or 12, but it was like 100% more pejorative than I ever am. But the reality is the skill set that it takes to be a bookmaker, someone who's leading the way, you know, the sportsbook manager, whatever you want to call him, the A guy, is so different than knowing the odds, even knowing how to book. I mean, it seems like there's just such a huge element of managing your staff. There's a huge element of managing the bosses, like you're managing below. And I mean, you deal with that. You know, you guys have tried to create an environment of CG Technology where there's less bureaucracy, there's more gamble. But even with that, what percentage of your job are you thinking, hey, should we move this to 5? So, and yeah, we're going to be the best line for the dog batters, but we don't mind a little bit of dog money here. How much of your time in a week is that? And how much is all the other things that any other job as a manager might have?
There's certainly a lot of managing up and down. I mean, if people make mistakes down, they could be regulatory issues, right? I mean, you put an extra 0 on a 5 to 1 or 50 to 1, and it's 500 to 1, and we have to honor bets taken, and that can be an issue. And so we have to definitely manage down very carefully, make sure those guys are always dealing.
Especially you guys have how many different locations?
8 in town.
Go ahead, Fez. You were going to jump in?
Yeah, just to use an example in defense of the bookmaker, Rams Colts. Let's go back.
Why? Because you're afraid they're not going to let you put your parlay tickets in?
They beat the heck out of me on my parlays this week. But let's go back to week 1, Rams Colts. All right, if you remember, that was when we didn't know if Andrew Luck was going to play in that game, and the Colts were laying 3 at the Rams. I know most places had this game off the board, but on the screen it was still showing 3. So there was at least one place in town that had that line at 3. I know of a person who went around to that place that had 1,000 limit on that game and played about 50 $90 parlays, all locked to, it wasn't me, to the Rams catching 3. That's the sort of behavior from bettors that makes bookmakers not want to deal with putting games up.
But it's a battle, right? I mean, if somehow you look, see, that's the thing I hate. And I always tell Matty is I don't like bookmakers. I like them as people oftentimes, but I don't like them professionally because they hate losing ever. Okay, so that guy, whatever he won, what percentage was that of any given book's handle that day? A small percentage
of the overall handle in that game. Yeah, very
no,
small.
forget the game. I'm talking about the whole day.
Well, that was the only volume on their NFL.
I mean, that's like saying, hey,
August.
It's like if Taco Bell is going to have a 2-for-1 taco, but someone can come, or like a drink. What happens if someone sat here and drank Mountain Dew for 14 hours? Do you not give unlimited refills because of that person?
There's a 3 hot dog limit at the South Point.
Wow, there you go. This is when Fez is dealing with the books, he'll tell you the truth about the games, but you're only going to get 50% of his ire with the books. And here's his motto with the books.
Peace and love. Peace and love.
Little Ringo Starr there. Good stuff. Matty, thanks for taking it. And again, obviously, this is your job, and you're as candid as anyone about this stuff. So we're moving. I think that's enough on the Raiders and the Chargers, right? All right, Monday night, both quarterbacks questionable. So, Matty, you gave some percentages of guessing for Luck and for the Titans QB, Mariota.
I think that Andrew Luck is probably only 40% to play, but what I hear is health-wise, he would have normally been 60 or 65%, if he was actually going to play this week. So I think he's healthier than maybe the situation. So he's certainly not 100% yet. So, do you rush an Andrew Luck back less than 100% on a 2-3 team? The problem is in the AFC South, 2-3 puts you one game out of first place. There could be some reason for Andrew Luck to come back here after Indianapolis Colts coming off that overtime win of the 49ers. And on the other side of this game, Marcus Mariota's in the exact same boat. Tennessee now 2-3, one game out of first place behind Jacksonville, who's 3-2. He's a little more likely to play this week, but the problem with Mariota, again, is it's a hamstring injury, and so much of his effectiveness on offense is predicated on his ability to move his legs. He's not going to be able to do that anywhere near 100% this week. So while he might play, you have to come to that decision again. If you're Tennessee, do you want a less than 100%, less than effective Marcus Mariota or Matt Castle, who looked terrible last week again, running your offense?
Excellent. It's like, God, you're good at this. Pretty good at this. Good stuff. All right, Fez, what's your take on just looking at the injuries, looking at Luck? And I'm interested in your number is when Luck does come back, how much of an upgrade are you giving the coach right now who you have as the worst team in the NFL?
Well, I would have upgraded him 6.5 points.
Hold on a second. Hold the phone. When we were on Colin Cowherd's preseason podcast, as a courtesy to you, I let you come on. And no, Colin said, listen, get Fezzik. No, it was somewhere in between.
I appreciate you carrying me there for that week.
No, that probably was the truth. I wasn't ready. So bring Fez on. You said that Mariota was worth 6 points.
Oh, I was talking about Andrew Luck. I'm sorry. I didn't
No. You said Mariota was worth 6 points on.
Right.
And now you're saying Andrew Luck's worth 6.5.
Versus Brissett, yes.
Ah. Okay, so what would you have said Luck's worth versus, the general?
Tolzien.
Yeah, Tolzien.
9.
Okay, so that's interesting. All right. And it shows you, it's the old joke, right? Joe Montana, Steve Young, how much is Montana worth? half a point, right? So,
but that assumes that Luck is going to be effective. I'm assuming he's coming back close to 100%. That is a leap of faith.
I could tell you this week, because we already had to talk about it in the risk room and with our odds-making team, if Andrew Luck was going to come back this week, our adjustment of a less than 100% Andrew Luck compared to 100% Jacoby Brissett was going to be 2.5, and if this game would have been at home instead of on the road, it would have been 2.
Say that again?
The adjustment we are going to make in this number.
So if Luck is announced tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, he's playing.
And we know we're only getting a 75% Luck.
Okay.
Over 100% healthy Jacoby Brissett in this game, because it's on the road at Tennessee, it's 2.5.
Wow, I'll take the over for the limit. I mean, how many times did we have to see like an Aaron Rodgers or a Luck get replaced by any kind of replacement quarterback, and it's always a touchdown.
I know, but at this point, when it's a touchdown is this situation. You're going the opposite way here, and you have to understand that it's a touchdown when Aaron Rodgers has started every game, and then he has to miss one. And then the backup who you've either never seen or don't trust comes in. But at this point, Scott Tolzien, we knew wasn't good. We saw him last year. We saw him to start the first game. What we have now is a sample size that says Jacoby Brissett is probably only slightly below average. And what is a 75% Andrew Luck worth?
Oh, I think he's well below average. I think he's a capable replacement quarterback.
Who's well below average?
Brissett. I would say Brissett's like a very bottom tier starting NFL quarterback. I mean, the very 30th.
Maybe today, but that's what matters, right? I wouldn't say 30th, but I would say maybe 25th.
Sure, 25th, which is like slightly 16th is average, right?
Yeah.
He's only been with the team for a month. I think that's a huge, leap of faith to say. I mean, how good is he going to be at the end of the year?
I mean, they look pretty good moving the ball with him.
Well, let's look at. Well, I guess we don't have the full season, or we got the full season numbers. Here's what I'm going to say: Belichick knows more about Brissett than anybody, and he traded him. What was the trade? What draft choice did he get? You remember?
I forget.
But it wasn't like a first rounder or a second rounder, right? So,
but they also have Jimmy Garoppolo. How many can you have?
But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying the fact he traded him is a sign that he doesn't like him. The fact he traded him for what he traded him for, meaning not a first. I mean, he traded Matt Castle for a second round pick. And it was the second round pick that was like the 34th or 35th in the draft.
Matt Castle had won 11 football games as a starter first.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that in general, the league's able to figure this stuff. I mean, listen, Garoppolo, he hasn't won hardly anything. And what they're saying, 3 number ones is what the debate is. So, but everyone's saying 2 number ones would be what it would take. So, I mean, listen, if you're trading 3 number ones to go up, what did for RG3, right? Remember that trade? They came up 7 spots or something, and it was like a bunch of 2 number ones, wasn't it?
Well, and this goes back to any non-quarterback number one is only worth the point to the line. A Myles Garrett's worth 1 point to the line. A elite quarterback's worth 6 points.
Yeah, which is why I've said for years, and I think in a way you almost got to give the Bears credit for this, and Seattle did the same thing. Until you got your quarterback fixed, nothing else really matters. Keep throwing your darts. I mean, pick 3 a draft until you get one.
So here's a good example of this that could help kind of quell my argument for this game. We put up a line on Raiders-Chargers. If Derek Carr was the starting quarterback, we all knew he's 100% healthy, what is the line on this game? 100% healthy Derek Carr. And what is Derek Carr, in your opinion, worth compared to E.J. Manuel?
I think he's worth 6. So
6. Okay,
4.25. Oakland minus 4.25.
So it's only a 1.5 difference than what we already have, but you're saying it's more than the 2.5. I'm saying we'd have to move where we are now.
Well, San Diego's gonna free fall down to pick them if Manuel plays.
I think we're getting a little deep in the weeds, but I think it's fascinating how a bookmaker thinks about it, how a better thing. I mean, you're quite frank, you're not hearing this other places. So kudos on that. Here's what I think this answer will wrap up this topic. If Luck were 100% versus Brissett today, what kind? And again, I know you got a team. What would you say off the cuff?
Probably 5.5.
Okay. And you're saying 6.
6.5.
Yeah. So it seems like he's valuing the hobbledness more than, that Luck would be less than 100%.
We saw where Bradford last week. You bring in a hobbled quarterback, and sometimes it's worse than having a backup in.
And maybe Matty's right. Look at Cam Newton. Couldn't play a lick the first couple weeks when he didn't play in preseason.
All right. So let's quickly then go to Mariota. Is it, I keep hearing it there. Is it Mariota or Mariota?
Mariota, right?
Mariota. All right. Mariota. Right now, what are we thinking about? And it's back to the idea of being less than 100% and all that. What is Mariota's value?
I think his is bigger here because I think Matt Castle is not a capable backup, is not someone who the team tends to rally around, and it just looked completely ineffective against the Miami team that was hapless for most of the year prior to last week. I think 100% Marcus Mariota compared to Matt Castle is at least 6 points.
But
Even though Mariota's numbers have been bad, this offense is predicated on the way he does it, running the football, moving his legs, getting out of the pocket. Matt Castle is actually a bad fit for this offense the way it's supposed to be run.
Fez, what's your thoughts on specifically, because it's more actionable for this game, if a limited Mariota comes back?
Yeah, it's much less than the 6, although I agree with that it could be upwards of 6. Mariota hasn't been good all year long, and now with the hamstring injury, and I think, RJ, he's going to get rushed back and play when he's more like 65%. It may only be
so
a couple points.
If it ends up that Luck doesn't play and Mariota does, maybe let this line run up a little bit and look to play the Colts, is what it sounds. You're saying that if Mariota does play, you think the market will overreact to that?
I think it will.
I could tell you, according to the power, if we looked at power ratings on this game and then we adjusted for injuries and this game got to 7 or higher on Tennessee, I would certainly look to Indy's side.
Last thing about this game. I thought one of the most confusing games of the year was the Raiders coming in and beating Tennessee on the road so badly, because then the Raiders really haven't looked good since, even before the Carr injury. Now we're looking, and again, maybe these games with Tennessee are deceiving, but now we're seeing Tennessee not be near as good. I really got to question the rate. We were all kind of eating, we were all saying we were wrong. I get humble pie, maybe would be the analogy on the Raiders, because I was pounding my fist. This is the team of the most regression I had seen in 5 years. Turnover margin, close wins, all the things that lead to that. And then they look good against Tennessee. They win another game. But, I mean, right now, so in your power ratings, Fez, who are you assuming is the Raiders quarterback?
I had them at 0 with Carr. So middle of the road team with Carr, but that assumes Carr's not 100%.
Okay. So Carr 100%, they might be +2. Wow. They'd be like +2?
No, they'd be +1.
So right now we're saying that Carr being limited would be about worth a point. So you had Raiders as -2 coming in. So even though there's been the ebbs and the flows, Carr healthy right now, the Raiders have been a significant a 3-point upgrade with Carr healthy from where you started them.
I think I started him at 1.5 at the beginning of the year, actually.
Well, we've got it -2 is what we got.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But the Raiders, I got to say, I got no confidence in the Raiders because every data point is an outlier. Think about the Jets game. They crushed the Jets. The Jets are better than we thought they'd be, much better. And that Tennessee game, they looked so good. And Washington, a no-show. I have no confidence in my Raider power rating.
Pregame.com. Now, guys, we're hitting the exciting home stretch. We've got the double likes. We've got the best bets. We've got the pros versus Joes. We got the smart money. But here is, for a lot of people, here's one of the favorites. This is Crossfire. The bettor and the bookmaker, they go head-to-head in this game, and we love it. It's the Detroit Lions and the New Orleans Saints. Matty Holt, longtime listeners know he's going down with the Lions ship. Fez is on the Saints. Fez, because I think Matty's being stubborn here, I'm letting you lead off.
Well, I like the Saints. They're coming off a bye, so good situation. Their strength of schedule's off the charts good. Their opponents have won 2/3 of their games, and that explains why their stats are not overwhelming by any means. But this is really just a fade of the Lions. Matthew Stafford limps off the field. He's been sacked 18 times, so he and Carson Palmer, the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. He has 2 injuries. I don't even know if he's going to play. He'll probably play, but he's certainly banged up. The Lions have been beyond fortunate, starting with David Johnson getting hurt with Arizona week 1, all the Giants wide receivers hurt week 2. Atlanta turned the ball over like crazy week 3. Minnesota, Bradford's out. Cook is out. Week 4, he gets injured. They've caught in every break. The Lions have terrible stats. They can't move the ball on offense. They have an injured quarterback, and their defense is mediocre.
That was convincing. Let me give some data, and then Matty, you're in trouble. It's like Rocky. Detroit has the 30th best yards per play in the league. They're -0.4. So, and by the way, they were -0.4 last year. Pretty amazing. So on offense, they're number 30. On defense, they're number 23, the Lions.
They're actually -0.8 this year on yards per play differential.
Oh, okay, yes. I'm sorry, you're correct. -0.8. Last year was -0.4. In year over year was -0.4. Yes, thank you. Now, you might think strength of schedule, 13th. So right in the middle, so we can't blame that for the Lions. They're +8 in turnovers. The Jacksonville's +10.
And they had the same record.
Buffalo's +8 and Detroit's +8. So it seems like you got horrible stats. Last year you had a bunch of close wins. This year you have a bunch of turnovers. It seems like there's a lot of things happening that are obscuring the Lions being a below average team, quite frankly. And boy, oh boy, did the sharp money coming on Carolina last week. Go, Matty.
Absolutely. Look, I am certainly, my initial analysis of the Detroit Lions was off, and this team is not quite as good as I thought. But the one thing that they have done in every single game this year, and it started a lot last year with the continuity in the locker room with this offense, is they have rallied when down. They are in the fourth quarter every game, and they rally. And look, they are a blown referee call away from being 4-1 this season. We're not talking about a team, oh my God, they're +8 turnovers and they're 2-3. They are a blown referee touchdown call away from being 4-1. They still rallied last week. They were getting blown out, rallied to get within 7 in the fourth quarter against Carolina, and that game should have beat Atlanta if that touchdown doesn't get called back. This is a team that rallies late. Let's assume that Matt Holt, our quarterback here, is going to be healthy this week, because that's all we can assume at this point, because they say he's going to be fine. I think this is too many points. The Saints, you talk about teams getting lucky. The Saints caught Miami in London off the biggest travel advantage maybe in the history of the NFL. They caught Carolina with no Cam and got whipped by the mediocre Minnesota Vikings and whipped by the New England Patriots at home.
So a couple things. Stafford, when he hurt his hand at the end of last year, now maybe a hand injury is different and all that, but some Big Ben, when he's hurt, he plays almost as well, if not as well. Some quarterbacks need everything right, dome quarterback. So I don't know, but if Stafford's banged up, I'm a little more concerned than the average quarterback. One last thing, though. When you said, they're one play away from being 4-1, but that one play would have just made my point just more extreme, which is this team's got a good record, right? 3-2 versus 4-1, it's the same concept. And their stats don't deserve it. There's these external factors that have a huge element of luck that's allowing them to win games.
But if they win that game against the Atlanta Falcons, the line this week is 2.5 for 3.
But it would have been more wrong. Like the line could have been more wrong.
I wouldn't like Detroit +2.5 or +3, but +5.5, which is going to be +6. Give me the money.
Well, just to be clear, right now we're grading this crossfire at 5.
Okay,
which is the
5, which is going to be 6.
Fezzik, 1 second. He made such an interesting point. Let's just say if the lines were 4-1, this line would be 3, let's say. Just keep it simple. If the line's supposed to be 1.5, and it would be 3 if they had... Oh, I'm sorry. If the line is supposed to be... So, Fez, if you like the Saints, you think this line should at least be 6.5.
I do.
All right. So if the line's supposed to be 6.5, and here it's 5, so, hey, he likes it, but it's not a best bet... Well, if the line's 3, it would have been off even more if they had won and been 4-1. So I think you're right for sure. If they're 4-1, this line's different. Doesn't mean this line's right, though.
No, I'm not.
Or that it's to the favor of the Lions.
And I don't think the line would have been 3. I do think, or 2.5. I think it would have been 3.5. There would have been an adjustment. Let's be fair. If we grade out that Atlanta-Detroit game, RJ, you gave a stat on this. When a team is +3 in turnovers and they get a pick 6 on top of it, of the history of the NFL, there's something like 96.5% to win the game straight up. That was a complete aberration that Detroit was lucky enough.
They did win the game. The referees stole it.
The normalized final score by the stats like 34-21 Atlanta.
All right, last question. Peterson being off the Saints, has it hurt him at all week 1? Because the same logic, he knew the offense and all that.
Anytime a player leaves, there's always a couple other guys in the locker room that if they like that guy, they don't feel good about it. So I can't consider it a positive.
I think it's a huge positive. He was a disruptive impact. He was running his mouth, and that other guy, Kalmara is their other running back, is getting lots of touches, and he's the much better back. So addition by subtraction.
All right, I'm giving Faz this one. Good analysis. Matt, you got a lot of love this show, but I think you're stubborn. But hey, listen, if you want to be a winner, you got to be stubborn sometimes. That was Crossfire. Good stuff for sure. Game number 8. This is our pros versus Joe's game. We got the Rams. We got the Jags. Right now, well, Matty, you're the one that sees all the behind-the-counter numbers. Why don't you break down the pro side, the Joe side, and then you can give us your opinion.
Sure. So, early in the week, we tend to take a lot more sharper action. At this point, we have about 10 times dollars wagered on the Jags over the counter as the Rams on the spread. And on the other side, about almost 12 times as much dollars wagered on the Rams spread on account as the Jags spread on account. And one of the gentlemen who bet
just to be clear, account is sharper bettors typically. I mean, it's a broad bucket, and over the counter typically less sharp.
Especially in a place like Las Vegas, where so much over the counter is people staying at a casino or just visiting that casino.
Continue.
And one of the gentlemen who bet the Rams this week, and I completely agree with his sentiment on why he took the Rams, said if you watched the game last week, and he had the Rams last week against Seattle, 5 trips to the red zone that only equated to 3 points. That doesn't happen to good offenses almost ever in the NFL. They were actually moving the ball on pace last week against Seattle. They just fell apart in the red zone. Look, it happens to young teams sometimes. It happened to a young quarterback last week. You can't back Blake Bortles when this team gets behind. If Jacksonville gets behind, the 2 games where they did this year, they ended up getting blown out in both because he can't throw the ball. He still had less than 100 yards passing last week in a win. I think the only side you could take here is the Rams, and if ever hits 3, the Sharps will bury it immediately.
Concur completely. Like the Rams, sometimes when you stall in the red zone, you say, hey, this...
Just to be clear, do you lean or do you like?
I lean at 2.5. I like at 3.
Okay.
All right. Sometimes you stall in the red zone. You got concerns like the Browns. They're just not a very good offense. The Rams are a good offense. Why did they stall in the red zone? Well, the very first drive is a microcosm of the loss to Seattle. RJ on first down, Gurley breaks a big run. The running back, he's reaching for the pylon for a touchdown. They're going to score for sure. And not only does he get it stripped out of his hands, but it rolls into the pylon. So it's a touchback to the 20. That was the entire game. Play after play after play repeated itself. They just got so unlucky. Meanwhile, although Jacksonville played a fine game against the Steelers, they were extremely fortunate to win by 21. Big Ben was just horrific in that one game. 2 inside-out finals that were not indicative of how the game was actually played. The Rams are the better team.
Now, again, listeners who are not as well acquainted with the Vegas approach to things, wait a minute. Big Ben being so bad is part of the game. Jags made him that bad. Yeah, there's some merit to that, but there is a significant amount of luck in interceptions. You were talking about Pro Football Focus doing quarterbacks who should have been intercepted, right? It's lucky or unlucky if they drop that ball. And oftentimes, when you have these extreme scores with a lot of turnovers, you can't overreact to them. But again, when you're over a touchdown favorite, as the Steelers were, you shouldn't allow such vagaries to dictate. Okay. So it seems like it's plain as day, pros and Matty Holt and Steve Fezzik on the Rams, both with leans, though. Let's go back just one comment each. Why not alike? Why not alike?
The 2.5 number is a little bit worrisome. And really, I should have said like anyway. I feel like I got
the game
cowardly.
Opened up a pick 'em. So the fact is 2.5.
Some of these numbers that are open are fictitious. So
No. They're not fictitious. Like Bet Online, right? Bet Online they'll open for a nickel, and we can sit here and say nickel, 500, and that's not a big bet, but it's still getting bet into.
It's fine, but here's the difference, and I think we should all acknowledge this: when they open and they're the only ones open, that nickel isn't treated like a nickel or even 5 dimes would be later in the week. They'll take that nickel and move a point, whereas a 5 dime bet from a really sharp guy on a Friday night might not move nothing.
But think about it, Matty. Where the line moves when Bet Online is still the only number in the world doesn't really matter, because soon enough, Chris / bookmaker is going to come in, or Pinnacle is going to come in, and or some of the sharper Vegas books like CG might come in, and then the line, you'll see Chris and Fez. You watch this like a hawk. I mean, Bet Online might be at 4 in a college game. And Chris will open up at 8.
And then Bet Online will immediately go to 8 as well.
As they should. But what I'm saying is...
So then do you call the opener 4?
You do.
So Bet Online opens at 4. Chris comes out at 10 and they go to 10. The opener's 4?
It is, but you break an interesting point, and something I've thought of doing at the Game Center was creating a small universe of books, the couple sharpest in Vegas, the couple sharpest online, and having the sharp open, saying whenever I don't care if this book's the first open or the seventh, this universe of 5 or 6 books, having that opener, I think, is interesting.
And the problem where you do get some false openers is in that example, they open 4, Chris comes out 10, and they go to 10. They will go to 10 there, let's all admit, without taking a bet.
Well, you guys, you guys move on air, too.
Everyone would. So how could the opener ever be 4 if there was never a bet taken between 4 and 10 and everyone else opened 10?
Well, the question is, was there any bets taken at 4?
But we don't know. Yeah. They're not going to give us that info.
But you just said 2 opposite things. You just said one just now. Maybe they're not even maybe they didn't even get a bet at that number. And then the other one is saying, well, when they do get a bet, they overreact to it.
There's both. So you don't know which one's really an opener. At least if they took a bet, you could say they took a bet at it.
Fez.
A little wise guy secret. I might like a game plus 2.5 right before the game kicks off on Sunday. I almost never, I hate to say never, but almost never will like a game plus 2.5 on a Wednesday, RJ. And the reason being, it's so important.
This is like a hedge fund concept,
to
right?
Get a plus
it's
3.
an asymmetric risk.
If there's a 75% chance the line is going to go down, I'll still wait, and I can always take plus 2.
Because think about it, if it stays the same, it's a wash. If the line goes up, you're gaining 20 cents or so. If from 2.5 to 3, if the line goes down, you're losing 4 cents, 5 cents.
Exactly.
So I can be wrong most of the time and still be better off just waiting it out. And if it drops down to 1.5, I'll grab a stale 2 and I'll bet plus 2.
Once a show, this is what I play because it's warranted. Only on the Dream Preview, you're getting something like that from Fez. Good stuff there. But it's a great point is when it comes, it's not like you can't lay 2.5 or take 2.5 come kickoff because there's no other line. It's not moving anywhere once the game kicks off, I guess in game, but it's a different thing. But now you have so much more to gain to get 3 if you like the dog. And if you only get 2, yeah, you'd rather have 2.5, but it's a modest difference. Asymmetric risk, as the hedge fund guys call it.
I like that asymmetric risk. I'm writing that down and stealing it.
Oh, no problem. Just it's trademarked by someone else probably. All right, next game. Good crossfire there. Good stuff. And then obviously pros versus Joes. Any closing thought on this? Oh, we're pretty good on the Jags. I mean, we're not. I mean, let's look at Fez's power ratings. Is with the Jags. You've got them right now. Wow.
I think I got them equal.
You've got them 1 point bet. There's only 11 teams in the league above the Jags. You got the Jags 12, and you've got them equal to the Rams.
But that's a little bit of rounding going on. I do feel the Rams are the slightly better team.
And Jacksonville has one of the worst home fields in the league, right?
Yes, I think I've got them 2 points better than an average team, and I don't know how.
Well, it's not better than an average team. Home field is
right,
2. Yeah.
Right. But I don't know. Have the Jags played more than one true home game all year long? Because they played the London game. So maybe we got to relook at that if they actually have a winning team. They never had a winning team. I don't know how good.
You mean the crowd enthusiasm? Well, let's see it before we react.
Yes.
All right. Next game number 9. This is the sharp money game. And there might be a mechanic on Twitter that disagrees, but this is coming. This is coming straight from Matty Holt. And he's got, I mean, you should have seen, he shows up with the data. The data is eyebrow raising that he brings to the table, and the sharp money on this game, or I'm sorry, the sharp money game is the Dolphins and the Falcons. Matty, where's the sharp money?
All on Atlanta here, both over the counter and especially on the sharp here, where I can't even put a percentage to it. It's 99% of the dollars wagered on account on the Atlanta Falcons right now, and it's been real money that caused this 2.5-point line move. This isn't air. This isn't moving on information.
Not fictitious.
It's not fictitious. This is a 2.5-point line move based on real dollars wagered.
Okay, so that jumped out at me. The line opened at 9 up to 12. And usually you'll see some significant dog moves, but seeing such a favorite move up to double digits in the NFL, I mean, there's some real support here, it seems.
Yeah, and I lean to the Falcons. I agree with this move. It comes back. You've been saying this for months, RJ. the Dolphin schedule, where they've been all over the place. They've not played in the same venue for a game for 2 months. So they finally come home. They're really tired.
I mean, to the point that they're having to use, snort stuff to keep their energy level up.
That was an entertaining video. He's a baker. He is. That's what the white substance is. But they get the win largely because Matt Castle is completely ineffective for Tennessee. So they're kind of gifted a win at home in the heat and humidity. I can just see the coaching staff. Great job, guys. Game balls all around. Everyone take off till Tuesday. We still got recovering from Irma. They're going to go to the Georgia Dome and quite likely get blasted.
So what was your joke about? Explain the joke again about the O-line coach.
Well, there's a white substance, and so I think he might be a baker.
I set you up there. All right, but I think there's interesting analysis here. I actually thought, I don't know, Matt Castle versus the greatest fatigue ever. I guess fatigue won. Were we impressed by the Dolphins last week?
No.
So this idea that, hey, it's a week later, how long are you going to give the fatigue story? Obviously it's less this week, but back on the road and in an environment where, like you said, if it was a little bit of celebration, but it leads into the idea of from celebration to distraction. So, Matty, how much distraction do you think this O-line? Because you got Colin Cowherd talking about Gase being, out of his depth, up there talking about this stuff. It feels like this is something, if I'm talking about me as a boss, if someone's snorting lines off the desk 3 offices down and I'm not, let's say I'm at another office, right? And whoever's running this office, I'm wondering why they didn't catch that, right? So there's got to be some heat internally.
And it wasn't just the snorting of lines. That video was disturbing on so many levels. Everything
listen,
about it.
If every guy that's ever had a fling with a stripper, let's not cast stones, all right?
What's even more disturbing to me is not that Gase was unaware or allowed this to happen, but he was aware that he was paying $10 million to Jay Cutler to come be the quarterback. Remember, he was the mastermind behind this. Here comes a locker room possibly divided.
But you're the guy saying, remember now, you were like, okay, week 1, Matt Moore might be a little better than Cutler. By week 3, Cutler's going to be better. And by week 11 or 12, Cutler could be better than Tannehill.
I said he could be better.
Yeah, well, come on.
A lot of people said, from day 1, he's going to be an upgrade from Tannehill.
What
I
I'm
was
saying is
negative on Cutler.
You were negative with
compared
the
to
signing?
the media. The media
No, but that doesn't matter. Is if you were the Dolphins, would you have signed Cutler?
Not for $10 million a year, no. Yeah. I would have played Matt Moore because I would have said he's going to be as good for the first 5 or 6 weeks. Now, as it turns out, Cutler isn't improving. RJ, he's regressing.
And on the other side of the ball, we have to say that if there was a team that might have needed to buy, it was the Atlantic Falcons. Their best defensive player, Vic Beasley, was banged up. Julio Jones, who comes back this game, was banged up. Courtney Upshaw, the linebacker, was banged up. They still don't get Mohamed Sanu back this week, but they pretty much get everybody else back. Vic Beasley should be a boost on that defense.
So we're not impressed with the Dolphins. I think Atlanta's a team that's gotten lost in a way. That bye has kind of stopped the narrative about how well Atlanta's been playing. I hear Colin, and again, I listen to Colin more than all the other radio shows combined. So, he's my kind of touchstone to what the, general media is saying. And I know the media doesn't speak with just one voice, but, he's like almost dismissing. And then the Falcons is like, see, everyone thought they were good, but hey, they could have got beat by the line. You hear that rap. Fez, you've got only Kansas City ranked above them. 1, Kansas City. 2, tied for second, Atlanta and Green Bay. So it strikes me, we go to yards per play, right? One of our favorites. By the way, guys, last week I put out my private yards per play format on Twitter. I was looking at it and I was saying, I think people might like this. Unbelievable response. Had over 600 likes, had a bunch of retweets, over 100 comments. So I've committed is as long as the feedback stays good, I'm going to be putting it out every week. It's already out right now at RJ in Vegas. I've got the offensive yards per play, the defensive, the net. We get the year over year to see if a team is drastically changing. And if so, is there a rationale for it? And now I've added turnovers and strength of schedule. And if you look at Atlanta, number 2 in offense, number 6 in defense, number 1 net. By the way, last year, they were 1.1 yards per play better net than, I guess plus 1.1 would be the way to say it. This year, they're plus 1.2. So now we've got, counting the playoffs. So the net yards from last year don't count the playoffs. So let's say 4 games. We got 20 games of data with a very similar team, right? Last year's Falcons versus this year, and it's within a 1/10 of a point. So I think we can feel pretty good, a 1/10 of a yard, about this number.
Sure looks like the Super Bowl hangover lasted 1 game, right? The game against Chicago, where they were struggling in offense. That's how long they missed Shanahan. They're clicking on all cylinders. Now, the question is Julio Jones going to be 100%? Sanu's out. They did get both wide receivers hurt against Buffalo. And I'll say this. Every single person would have them with the Chiefs at number 1 if Matt Ryan didn't throw a 50-yard incompletion that was returned for touchdown, the first time in the history of the NFL.
What was the first time in the history of the NFL?
Where a quarterback threw an incompletion and they allowed the defense to just pick up the ball and run 50 yards for a touchdown.
So you're complaining about the referees.
Yes.
Okay. Entertaining. All right. Now, if only you just had a podcast that you're bitching about referees and about metagame type, like why didn't they call a timeout?
He's holding the ball at midfield against Buffalo. His hand is hit. He's still gripping the ball. He thrusts the ball down the field with control, and they give the Bills a touchdown.
Fez won't stop. All right. Now, if you look at Atlanta's numbers, the reason I put turnovers and strength of schedule is it can be mitigating factors, right? Oh, this is why the record, all right. Falcons -4 in turnovers. So if you're winning and your stats are good, you expect that to even out. So that's another sign of optimism. Strength of schedule, number 6 in the NFL. So the best numbers playing the 6th hardest schedule, mighty impressive for Atlanta. I don't lay double digits in the NFL, so I'm passing. Fez, you're the master of the derivatives. Anything, is there any logic? If we think Miami might be tired, well, we want the second half, but we obviously don't want to play the second half with the big favor. Any derivatives here you might be interested in?
Yeah, let's try to get lucky. We don't have to bet every game. We can certainly pass.
Yeah.
Let's hope Atlanta underperforms in the first half, and they're only ahead by 3 or less, so we can go ahead and lay 7 on Atlanta second half and get at -10.
All right, so
get at that opener.
So in the right situation, look Atlanta second half because the fatigue factor comes in. I like it. All right, game number 10 is our double like game. Only one of them. So we lean or like, and both the boys, there's only one game that they like both of it, or both of them like the same team. And the game, Houston Texans, Cleveland Browns. Fez, who do you like?
I like the Browns. All about quarterback here, that the quarterback the public's looking at is Watson. He's playing great for Houston. So they want to bet on this team. Even though they lost their last game, he played very well, especially in garbage time. But the big upgrade this week is for Cleveland. They go ahead and bring Hogan in, a huge upgrade over Kaiser, which makes Cleveland a much...
Now let's talk about this. A backup quarterback that doesn't have a name is coming in, and we're upgrading. Now, let's not go past that. Let's not pass that by without giving it its due time to explain. Explain the rationale.
Kaiser was, as Matty's been saying in every podcast, not an NFL quarterback. He's not a starting quarterback. He's not a backup quarterback. He's simply not ready. And yet they threw him to the wolves and kept putting him out there. We was throwing over 2 interceptions for every touchdown pass. A bad quarterback throws a 1-to-1 ratio. We all know what happens when you lose the turnover battle, you lose the game. So Hogan, just by being an ineffective backup quarterback, is still a big upgrade.
So on the Hogan quarterback situation, what do you think, Matt?
And the other thing to mention is it starts to affect the whole team when you're throwing that many interceptions every game and you're that ineffective and your teammates see that you're not ready to play in this league. Just having Hogan in there might stabilize the team. It might actually rally the defense up a little bit. Oh, we're not starting on our own 30 every time, having to defend going in. and you should get some. And I think that Houston's a little bit overrated here. I know Deshaun Watson and their offense had a nice couple of games, but we saw the deflation last week on defense instantly when J.J. Watt went out with the injury. I don't know that this Houston defense is as good without J.J. Watt.
Well, obviously not, right? One of the best defensive players in the league. Got to mean something.
And 3 of their best 4 defenders are out now. So Brian Cushing goes out for performance-enhancing drugs. He got suspended before the season started. So they're down a middle linebacker. And this guy, Merciless, he's a linebacker, RJ. But he is as good a pass rusher as Clowney. That's their one remaining pass rusher. So they had the trio. They had J.J. Watt, Clowney, and Merciless. Those guys were monsters. You could not block those guys. That's why Houston's defense was so good. 2 of the 3 are now gone. Merciless losing doesn't get the hype. He's more important than J.J. Watt.
Okay, we're going to get Matty's handicap here. Obviously, it's a double like, so we know he's on the Browns. I will give one piece of information about Houston's defense. So I do a show on SB Nation. It's called The Pregame Line, in which on Tuesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific, obviously, we do 1 hour with Houston radio host Fred Fowler. Really good guy. Fred does some stuff. Sharp guy with pregame.com also. And we just recap the games. It's a look back instead of a look ahead, which makes it fun because, obviously as the week progresses, we're all looking ahead, but we got to learn from the past. And he's a Houston guy, so he's in the media. He said, yeah, Watt is a great player, but in a way, him and Clowney should be playing very similar positions, if not the same. And with Watt in, they have to try to use Clowney for something else, and he's not near as effective. Again, this is getting X's and O's that I don't have a great understanding of. But he believes that, like we saw last year how good Clowney looked, that we're going to see the same Clowney now he's in the Watt position. Doesn't really affect his game as much, and you always want, obviously, an extra good player, even if he's not playing as effectively somewhere else. But I think Watt's absence, if Clowney steps up the way Fred thinks, maybe isn't as tough as we might think. And I asked him, I said, what's the mood? Because you would think it's deflating. He said, it's net very positive. He said, because they feel like they've got their quarterback the next 10 years. And losing Watt for the season, and who knows, because you hear this injury is pretty bad. It might be beyond it. Let's hope not. But is quarterback's worth 7, a good quarterback, Watt's worth a half. He used to be worth 1 maybe, but half this year, you would say, I think we all agree, it sucks, and he's a nice play. And again, obviously he, is a great man for what he's done with the hurricane and all that and other things. But I think net, if Houston's up, I don't want to lay 9.5 with them here. I don't disagree with you guys, but I think this idea that these defensive injuries is going to deflate them psychologically, I don't, at least from Fred Fowler, I don't think it's true.
And one of the things I always try to do in this space, and I tend to do okay when I jump on Steve and your side of the counter and make some bets, I can usually hold my own. But one of the things that I always look at in a game, in a week where there's 5 double-digit spreads, not 1, not 2, because the sharps like to avoid the double-digit spreads when it's the only one on the board. There's 5 of them, so you're going to get action both ways. When I left the office today, we had $10 wagered on account on the Houston Texans on this game, and tens of thousands of dollars wagered on the Cleveland Browns on account. Tends to be sharper bets than over the counter on the Cleveland Browns in this game. And they weren't one $50,000 bet. It was several bets. That makes me think a lot of people are thinking the same way as Fez and I, that Cleveland at double digits is probably the right side.
And we'd be remiss to not talk about how all we got to do to make money this time of the year is blindly bet on winless teams in the NFL. And Cleveland certainly qualifies. They still have not won a game. So, that's a great trend to follow.
And here's the detail. So go back to 1989. Take a team since that's 0-4 or worse, 0-5, 0-6, etc. 56.5% of the time you're covering. So we preach 55 is how you don't have a straight job and you live in a big house. Well, this is better. Now you might say, well, some trends get known, some trends, the logic of them dissipates as the league changes. Most travel trends in the NFL especially are not valid. You agree with that, Matty?
Yep. or not as valid.
Yeah. And I've seen some stuff like if you dig into back-to-back road games, there's actually a couple subgroups there that are huge, like 1,200 games since '89, and they are like 54%. Like there's some real magical stuff in there because, but actually, let me restate this. If you start, and again, this is somewhat arbitrary, start in 2007 or whatever, but if you start right around 2006 or 7, and I'm going by memory here, some of the travel stuff where it's back-to-back road games becomes very positive because the market's still kind of downgrading, and we're already talking about the 49ers, and just with the way travel is today, it just doesn't affect these teams the way it used to.
I mean, they're not riding on rickety old buses here. They're flying first class in some of the best airlines possible.
Now, here's the difference, though. When it's the 0-4 and beyond trend, what's driving that those teams are positive to bet on is public bias. Well, as betting has gotten bigger since, over the decades, as there's shows like this and shows like our Fox show, a national radio show, 3 hours a week on Fox. Oh, by the way, it's a good little time to talk about it. 11 to 12 Pacific on Friday night. We preview college football. We need an extra hour on Saturday, 10 to 12 Pacific, previewing NFL and recapping college, all right there at the same time. Imagine a national radio show, even 10 years ago, talking all gambling. Just wouldn't have happened. So with more bettors, it means there's more recreational. The pros are betting 10 years ago, they're betting now. It's the recreational bettors that are the influx, and they're more susceptible to the biases. So to me, any trend that's about a public, like that's fading, let's say a team that won by 40 or playing on a team that lost by 40, all those kind of let's not overreact trends, I think most of those have gotten better in recent years. You agree?
I do agree. And there's more bettors than ever. I mean, we see it in all the stats from the American Gaming Association. We don't have to make this numbers up. The American Gaming Association and other legitimate, credible organizations will tell you there's more bettors now than ever in the history of sports betting in the United States.
Double like on the Browns. Well, guys, there's 3 games left, and there's 3 of us. That means there's 3 best bets. First, though, I talked about it at the beginning, and I'll make this quick. I mean, it's been a great show, and Matty Holt, I would say he's the MVP. Fez is my MVP of 2017, 16, last couple years, I'd say, for pregame. But we're giving Matty the MVP for the pod today. Great stuff. But we have gone long, so I'll make this one quick. We talked about it. We've doubled our audience in a couple of weeks of this show, doubling now CNN, if you can believe it. We want to thank Podcast One. We want to thank Adam Carolla, who's given us a wonderful platform. But as we said, we want to thank you guys. Well, what I did a couple weeks ago is I said, we've been given a coupon to get Fez's or anyone's really premium NFL's best bets. He's given one best bet here, but on Sundays you might have how many, Fez, best bets, counting totals and such?
Usually 5 to 6.
Yeah. So that stuff's all out there. Usually you're selling that $25, $29 or so.
And right now I've got my 2 best bets, both sides in the NFL. You get 2 for the price of one, $25. Can't discount that, can you, RJ?
Oh, yes, I can, Mr. Fezzik. So what we did was a couple weeks ago, we said, if you guys use more coupons than we did the week before, because what I saw between week 1 and 2 was the coupon usage went way up. Right, because the listenership was growing. I'm like, guys, let's keep this baby rolling. Every week that it rises, we're going to add another $1 to the coupon. So it went from 10 to 11 to 12, and now 13.
I've always had triskaidekaphobia, though.
13. Is that when you eat too much turkey? Oh, wait, that's something else. All right. So right now we're going to 13. But here's the amazing part. This sounds crazy. Matty Holt, you're a businessman. We had 5 times as many people use the coupon last week than the week before. So we've, over that time, we went up like 50% or whatever between just 1 week, but it went 500%. Now here's the catch-22. That's amazing, but now that's the bar you got to beat this week. So guys, if you don't care about the best bets or you don't bet enough, whatever, we love that you listen, and that's what matters to us. This is there if you want it. And if you want it and you can save $13, it means you're getting more than half on all of Fezzik's best bets. And by the way, that coupon, NFL Dream 13. So NFL is 3 letters, Dream spelled out, the number 1, the number 3, NFL Dream 13, all caps, NFL Dream 13. And guys, it's a challenge, but if you beat it again, we'll go to 14 next week. All right, guys, 3 games left. And what I love about our best bets is we each bet our own games. Now, Fez, I bet a lot of your games too. But when we give a best bet, you can know for sure that we're betting it ourselves.
What are you doing? Wise guy don't carry his money in a wallet. Hey, wise guy carries money in a roll.
And we're taking off the rubber band on the roll and betting these games ourselves. All right, first game. Who's going first here, me or you, Matty?
Whoever, I'll take it.
Go.
I'm going to go Chicago Bears. Very rarely do I take the Monday night team winner or loser again and fire back. But this is a situation here where the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, after starting +7 in weeks 1 and 2 in turnovers and starting 2-0, they were a little bit overvalued. We talk about teams whose stats didn't match their record. It was Baltimore after 2 weeks. But after 2 more weeks, I don't know that there was a team that dropped as much in power ratings as the Baltimore Ravens, getting absolutely smashed by both the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. Suddenly, they bounce back and beat an Oakland Raiders team without their starting quarterback last week, and we're all back on the Baltimore Ravens bandwagon. The injury list is still the largest in football on Baltimore. There's no teams that has more players lost from game 1 to now than the Baltimore Ravens. Chicago Bears, look, we talked about the Cleveland Browns having energy and life pumped into the entire team because they made a quarterback change from one that was unsuccessful to one they hope will provide a little more stability and, if nothing else, energy. Mitchell Trubisky provided that on Monday night. The defense looked better. He was playing hard. He still made some young mistakes, but I like the work I saw on Monday night from. They get Danny Trevathan back from suspension this week, so that defense is only going to be better. These two teams are not a touchdown apart. I'm going to take the 6.5 or 7 with the Chicago Bears.
All right, first off, very good handicap. We're at 6.5 right now. So that's a consensus number. So we'll grade
6.5, no problem.
Grade it 6.5. A couple questions. I thought your point of, okay, Ravens started fast, thought it was turnovers and such, to their benefit. Last 3 games, they get embarrassed in London by the Jags. Now, we might start reevaluating them, but a team of the Jets beat, right? So, all right. And then they get embarrassed by the Steelers.
In fact, the only game where the Steelers scored 30 or more this year.
Yeah. And a Steelers team, there's big questions about, for sure, right? Fez might be right or not, but there's big questions. And then the one win that, like you said, is against a backup quarterback. So I think your analysis there is right on. Let me ask about the Bears, though. So the new quarterback is an upgrade, in your opinion, right now?
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes, because he can do more things. Because his feet are better, because he has a stronger arm, he actually can make more down the field throws, and he can get out of. We saw them moving him out of the pocket quite a bit last week. He is faster and bigger and stronger.
Fez, do you agree with that? Just with Trubisky?
I don't have enough data. I'm not sure.
Obviously, it's one game.
My concern is that his touchdown pass he threw really should have been intercepted. He seems too raw to me. I like the direction that the Bears are going with him. I think he will be better in a month. I don't think he's better yet, but Mike Glennon was pretty awful. So I think he's going to turn it over more.
Yeah, so close. Okay. So last question for me on this one, and then I want to get Fez's handicap on this same game, is I was betting the Bears like crazy end of last year. Their stats were amazing. I mean, if you look at Chicago, they were plus 0.4 last year on net yards per play. That means they're, that's a 9-7 or 10-6 team, right, Fez? Plus 0.4. So they obviously weren't. This year they're minus 0.2. So, but still saying an average team. But most people don't think Chicago's average. But I heard this from someone, I can't remember who.
And Baltimore is a minus 0.6 for all those people listening.
Yeah, Baltimore's number 27 right now in the NFL in net yards per play. So
And you're going to lay 6.5 with the 27th ranked team in net yards per play.
No, I agree. I mean, it's troublesome for sure. And it's brand too, right? Harbaugh and the brand. But here's my question. Someone smart told me the Bears are so weak at receiver. You can look at all these other stats and everything, but the lack of playmakers makes them a team that's going to just always struggle to score. Have you reevaluated that? Or do you have a different opinion today?
Well, the good thing sometimes about bringing in a backup quarterback is he's used to playing with the backup receiver. So when all your frontline receivers come down, these backups that were all backups in the preseason and into their first game, they're used to playing with the backup quarterback in the second string offense. So actual Trubinsky looked okay, right? I mean, they finally threw balls to Marcus Wheaton, who Glennon actually never completed a pass to all year long. The big free agent, the big pickup they got from Pittsburgh. And he got hammered on a play. Wheaton did. I don't know that he's going to be fine this week after getting lit up, but I think he looked good. The receivers aren't that bad. You get Kendall Wright, who's an experienced guy. He's got a little bit of speed. He has some drops problems, but look, the weapons aren't there. You're right, but that team looks like they have energy. 95 or 85% of the tickets, 92% of the cash on the Ravens. So certainly the public's not looking at the Bears. By the way, up at pregame.com, click Game Center. Only place on the internet that you can get your cash splits on these games for free. Nowhere else on the internet. Check it out. When you compare tickets and cash, it can get mighty interesting because when the big bets are different than the tickets, it's a sign of where the pros are playing. Fez, what's your handicap on the game?
I lean to Baltimore, and maybe I'm being
You lean Baltimore. So
Yes.
You think this line should be, if it's 6.5 now, you at least got to think it's a half point to lean, right? If you thought the line should be 6.5, you would pass it. So you're saying that this line should be 7.
Correct. I make it 4 on a neutral and 3 for a home field for Baltimore. Chicago, back to the wide receivers, they had not had a pass of over 29 yards the entire season going into last night. And they got one on a fake punt.
So we're taping on Wednesday, so going in 2 nights ago, but go ahead.
Right. So they just have no downfield passing at all, which is going to make it very difficult for Trubisky to succeed. And going back to home road dichotomy, and maybe I'm just overthinking this because of this year, the Bears have played 3 games against quality opponents at home. They played Pittsburgh, they beat them. They played Atlanta, they could have beaten them. They played Minnesota even, and they followed it up each time, completely falling on their face on the road.
Historically, though, even last couple of years, relative to their home, they have one of the smaller home fields. So maybe something's changed.
So maybe I'm being fooled by, and this isn't that
recency bias.
By not so much recency bias, but just I'm finding the pattern up, down, up, down.
Which book are you talking about?
Think big, think small. Is that correct?
I think he's thinking fast and slow.
I obviously thought slow answering that. So I'm seeing.
I think that it's some variation.
So I'm seeing a heads, tail, heads, tail, heads, tail. I'm like, oh, it's heads time for the Bears to play a bad game, and I'm making a mistake probably.
And Pinnacle, the sports book, put out a list of books that weren't gambling books that helps you think like a handicapper, and that book was on there. Matty, what's your thoughts on last question on this game? Best bet Bears for Matty Holt, the bookmaker. Is the total's gone down, but is this Bears correlated with the under? I know that's the, default is dog and under, 39.5 right now. I mean, the Bears don't cover in a shootout here, right? Now, obviously you can score over, 40 or over and it not be a shootout, but do you see a correlation with the under?
This would almost be a correlated parlay for us, almost, because
which means you would take it off the board.
That's for parlays that were correlated.
Yeah.
Basically, any parlay for us almost under that's 38 with a spread of 7 or more is going to be pretty close to that. And this one's pretty close at 39.5 and 6.5.
So forgetting about us profiling the game and thinking, the Bears are going to do well if they can stop the Ravens because the Bears aren't going to score. You're saying just mathematically this is a borderline correlated parlay.
Yeah, and the points are such a premium. Any total under 40 in the NFL, the underdog points almost become 1.25 their normal value per point.
So, Fez, let's talk about this. 2 factors here. The mathematics of the spread and total, and then the game handicap having a correlation. Speak on each.
Yeah, I love your correlation because with a 7-point, probably get to 7-point spread and that low of a total, like Matty said, he doesn't even want to accept it. When a bookmaker says, I really don't want to take these, I'm going to flag it for correlation. That means that's exactly the sort of bet you should be looking to make.
The old Warren Buffett line, right, is he talks about when people are scared, get greedy. When people are greedy, get scared. I flip that. When a bookmaker is scared, that's when I get greedy, right? And if they don't want these borderline, or at least they're not going to take. I want, when I make a bet, the bookmaker to cringe. All right, second best bet. Oh, speaking of my bets, I am going with, let's see here, game. All right, so 12, and then we've got 11. The 49ers, that's right. I'm going with the 49ers. Now, listen, there's a lot of talk about road for the 49ers and the idea of, they played overtime now. What is it? 2 in a row, right? So it's
2 straight overtime losses
on the road.
Yes.
And now you're playing on the road a third time. I'm going to go into the database. I'm guessing that's a rare occurrence, if ever. But I think this 49ers team is a young team. So I think that fatigue in general means a little bit less, right? And I think they're having deeper rotations. When you're not that good, your first string's not that much better than your second string. Right? There's a replacement level player in the NFL that every team has. That's an interesting concept. When you're one of the worst teams, is maybe your whole team replacement level almost. And thus, if your D-line, let's say, is playing half as many plays because they're tired, is that much of a downgrade? I don't think it is. But this is more about Shanahan. They have a plan. Whenever a team starts to get to the point of, there's been times with business, and I won't give the details, that it looked like we were doing things that were problematic, as in like, that's a bad sign for pregame. Like if all you saw was that action, you would say, that's a bad sign. I had the plan in my head. I was the one person who knew all the details, and I knew that we're doing this for a very important reason that's going to pay off tenfold. So, I'll give one good example. Is we dropped our ESPN show here in town. We had it for almost 5 years, and after March Madness, we dropped the show. Now, a lot of people might say, wait a minute, 5 years with a show, now you don't have it. You don't have any show. What's going on? Trending down. But we knew at the time that we were going to have our Fox show, or at least we were at a high 90% likelihood there. And there were alternatives to Fox that were in the wings if that didn't work out. And we were going to go national. So the idea of lose the Vegas show and pick up 330 stations nationwide on Fox, Sirius 83, iHeartRadio app, that's a great one. So when I would hear people, the whispers about, that's a bad trend line, I actually not only knew I was right, but I also loved that they were wrong. Like whenever you can have a competitor have misinformation, obviously that's a good thing. I think the 49ers are sitting around going, and Colin said this. He said, actually it was Gottlieb that said this, I enjoy Gottlieb and I actually do his show every Thursday, he said that, look, we lost another game. Boo-hoo. We're going to get the number 1 pick. Now, I'm not saying the 49ers are trying to do it because I don't believe in tanking in the NFL, Fez. But the fact of the matter is, I think the 49ers could take or leave. They want to win, but as long as they feel like they've got a plan and the results of losing includes a really high draft choice, I don't think this team is down at all. And let me ask the question. Do you think the 49ers' energy and focus is any less today than it was week 1?
No, and look, I've been bagging on this team to Fez all year long that I thought
because Fez has had them pretty highly ranked.
Yeah, and I've been saying, hey, they're bad, they're the worst team, they're the worst defense. And the one thing I want to give them credit for 2 weeks in a row, especially last week, they were down 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to the Indianapolis Colts with 0 wins on the season. Most teams with 0 wins, down 2 touchdowns in the fourth, go ahead and mail it in that game and get on to next week. San Fran rallied from 2 touchdowns down to get that game to overtime before losing it in overtime. That shows me this young team isn't quitting on their new coach, and that means something with point spreads.
Yeah, and this goes back to these winless teams we're betting on. Let's be a little bit selective. What's our basic strategy? We want to bet on a winless team that's young, that had very modest preseason expectations. San Francisco was supposed to win, about 5.5 games? So they're not going to be down. They expected this. It's no big deal. Contrast that with the team we're about to talk about, say the New York Giants, that they expected to be in the playoffs, maybe a totally different attitude.
And in a way, I'm bearing the lead here to wrap, which is that the 0-4 or worse trend that we've talked about is 56.5%. So I've got to find a reason not to play. And maybe there's a small reason, because I was wrong about Washington. I was down on Washington. You know, it was old Andy Dalton analogy, losing. And I still think Cousins is not going to have a good year. But it seems like the rest of that team is mighty good. I mean, 5th yards per play and the number 1 hardest schedule in the NFL. So, I mean, Fez, you've got Washington right now 11th, right? So you had him entering the season. Wow, that's only a half-point upgrade. So you're saying the way they're playing right now is pretty much in line with what you expected?
No, I had them as a minus team, and now they're going into the season.
Oh, that's how we had the typo there. Okay,
right. So I had them as a below-average team, and now they're a 1.5 better than an average team. I got to tell you, RJ, I'm worried I'm low on the Redskins. I thought that they lost 2 1,000-yard receivers. Well, they pick up the kid from Cleveland, and maybe it's just Kirk Cousins is way better than I thought. You mentioned strength of schedule. Their average record of the teams they played year to date, 750 winning percentage. Not like 630, 750. So they're doing it in the stats against really good teams like the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think no team has improved as much as they took the blueprint of let's build this team from the line, both defensive and offensive, and you could make a strong case that no team did a better job of improving their offensive and defensive lines in the offseason than the Washington Redskins.
Yeah, and from what I hear, and again, I got to go by guys like Mike Lombardi, but the O-line coach for the Skins is one of the best in the NFL. So, and those kind of coaches don't get a bunch of attention when you have an edge there. So I don't love betting against. This is not a bet against the Skins, but I'm getting double digits. The Skins would be happy to win this game by 7. They're going to be happy. 49ers are still playing hard. We got our 56.5% 0-4 or worse trend going for us. So when you got something that clean, you go with it. And lastly, and I really messed up not talking about this earlier, they've lost these games. But you look at the margin of loss, the last 4, it's like a combined 11 points in 4 games. Imagine that. They could be, if they would have scored judiciously, I guess it would be 4 wins. So 15 judicious points, perfectly judicious, the 49ers would be 4-1. Right? So when you lose 4 games by 11 points, yeah, you're not going to win them all. But man, oh man, we talked about if X had happened, how different would this line be? Let's just say they had 2 wins of the 4, so they're 2-3. What's the line in this game?
It's certainly not double digits.
Yeah.
They're the Chargers of the Bay Area.
But you want to bet a team that plays close games when you're getting double digits. Best bet on the 49ers. All right. This is always where we finish it. Fez in the cleanup position. The only 2-time Super Contest champion, right? So and he did it back to back, just showing off a little bit. And this is a guy. How's your NFL season going so far? I know the answer.
66% year to date. Did have a losing Sunday, however. Want to disclose that?
Well, means you're probably going to bounce back. Yeah, that's what's funny, right? Is no matter what, there's a gambler who will say, "Oh, they lost 11 in a row. They're due," right? And then the other one wants to ride the streak, and Matty sits in the middle collecting Matty the Vig, Matty.
and maybe some of the best evidence, I'll say it, in terms of me being a winning bettor. There's bets I try to make against CGT, and they're like, "Oh, Fez, you can have 1,000 on that. Thank you. It's early in the week."
All right, so obviously, if you've listened this far, you know how sharp he is. You've got a coupon code if you want to use and get his very best. Here comes his best bet. But you can follow him on Twitter, and whenever he's got anything for free, his power ratings, his line move predictions, his Monday recap, all kind of great stuff, all 100% free. Follow Fez on Twitter. It's at Fezzik Sports, Fezzik, at Fezzik Sports. Best bet time.
Let's go to the Sunday night football. Giants Broncos going to go under the 39. I'd bet that now before it drops even further. I'm going to keep this handicap real simple here. Denver, they have an offense that's average. Their stats are a little bit below average. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Simeon's improving. I'm going to call them an average team. Their defense, elite. Arguably the best defense in the NFL. Certainly one of the top defenses. Let's turn over to the Giants. The Giants defense, average, middle of the pack. Certainly no disgrace. They played very well on defense year to date. It might regress a bit. However, the Giants offense, I'll make the case, is easily the worst offense in the NFL. And here's where the odds makers have made a mistake. They've looked at their year-to-date data evaluating that offense. Well, the Giants are terrible on the O-line. They can't block anyone. Their running backs are awful. Eli is aging, can't throw the fastball anymore. But the one thing they can do is zip that ball out on slants to their wide receivers and make big plays. We saw those wide receivers getting healthy, and they improved. Week 1, the wide receivers were hurt. 3 points against a bad Dallas defense. Week 2, wide receivers still hurt. 10 points against a Detroit Lion defense that isn't any good. Then they started scoring the points. Well, guess what? Beckham's hurt. Not just Beckham. All 4, their top 4 wide receivers are all out. That's the only thing the Giants can do is utilize their position of strength, wide receiver. Now they have the worst wide receivers in the league. They're trying to pick up guys from their practice squad. They are not going to be able to score against this Denver defense. They'll have to run more. And if there's one thing Denver can do on D, elite rush defense. They only give up 2.5 yards per carry. And the Giants have to go ahead and run the ball half the time in this game because Eli will get killed if they don't.
That's professional level stuff. Matty, 1 second I was going to ask you a quick question on that. Well, why don't you go, Matty, then it might inform my question.
To Fez's point, too, and the reason that we've seen so much action here on Denver is not only are their top 4 running backs, Odell Beckham Jr., Sterling Sharp.
Receivers, yeah.
Yeah, receivers, Brandon Marshall and Dwayne Harris all out, but their top 2 running backs, Paul Perkins and Orleans Darkwa, who they finally got going, also both hurt this week.
And cluster injuries, right? We talk about it all the time. If you go from first to second string, you might know the name of the first string, but that second string's not that much worse oftentimes. But when you go into the practice squad and beyond, signing guys off the street, it's about not even knowing the offense. You can remember the Steelers had running back situations like that in the playoffs. I think it was a guy named Tate, if I'm remembering, a running back, but maybe I got that wrong. His guy only had like 12 plays. Like came in the game, the number 1 back knew 12 plays. So when he was on the field, it was going to be one of these simple plays. You can't even you can put a value on it, but it's huge. It seems like to me that one wide receiver factor, we always talk about, there's only a few people, 3 dozen in the league that are non-quarterbacks that are worth a half point or more. I mean, how many points is this? Well, if all the receivers came back, you might say, well, Beckham's 1 and none of the other receivers are worth anything, so 1. Well, no. I mean, is it 3-4 points? You add it all up with the cluster?
I think you're getting into a touchdown area because you've got guys that are worse than replacement level now that are having to play wide receiver. And also think about the mindset of the team. They're likely to lose this game by double digits. If the Giants 2 weeks ago trailed Tampa Bay 10-30, and they had the ball 4th and 10 at midfield, early in the fourth quarter, they're going for it. In this game, they're going to be down 3-23. If they have that same situation, they know they can't win this game. They're going to punt because they know they can't pick it up.
Any closing thoughts on the game, Matty?
No, I do think, look, finally the Giants did get a couple of guys going last week, including Orleans Darkwa, who's hurt last week. I always like to bet against teams the first game without a bunch of cluster injuries. After a while, maybe the replacement guys in the Giants will learn the playbook, adapt to Eli, and maybe the offense won't get up to the level it was 2 weeks ago, but maybe it gets back to at least not the worst in the NFL. That first game with 6 starters missing on offense at position players, that's bad news for the Giants this week.
I agree. So here's my last question. It's about execution. Why not get pure exposure to the Giants? And I know we don't want to give a team scoring total because most people don't bet those. So you got on record your best bet on the under. But for the more sophisticated players, do we look at the Giants team total under?
Yeah, I like the Giants team total under. And frankly, I probably should be betting the Broncos as well. But it's the hot stove, RJ. Having tried to win laying more than 10 points in the NFL, it's just so difficult. It's a bet I hate.
But what I'm saying is if you could get down, you bet so much, it's hard for you to get your max bet. All you want to get down on things like team totals, Fez. But if you're a normal bettor who can get down all they want on team total, all they can eat, right? You can only eat so much and everyone eats differently. Would you, if you could choose between under in the game or under Giants, what would you take?
If I was betting on Saturday, I would choose under on the Giants, but the buffet's not open yet. There's no team totals up yet. And every 12 hours, that 40 goes to 39.5, goes to 39. By the time the team totals get up, they're going to get priced like a 38 total.
All right. So you feel, but the catch-22 is efficient market theory says all known information is built into the line. you shouldn't be able to predict lines, but you have predicted like 70% line moves for free up in the forums at pregame.com. When do you put out your line move predictions?
On Tuesday, and I don't believe in the efficient market. I believe in the semi-efficient market.
And this one is already, for those of you who are going to ask, because we talked about one of these earlier, this one is already a correlated parlay. You cannot correlate the New York Giants and under or the Denver Broncos and over in a parlay in this game because it is directly correlated. You know, if you're going to lay 13 with Denver, they're probably, in order to cover 13, the likelihood of them having to go over is too high. If you bet the Giants plus 13, the likelihood of the game staying under is also too high.
Now, some of you out there maybe are not betting in Vegas, and if your guy does allow such parlays, well, you can take advantage of that. All right, guys, what a show. I mean, excellent stuff. We'll be back next week. And remember, we got the Dream Preview College Edition, which is two different guys with me, but very, very sharp, deep college dives. Check that out. You can follow me on Twitter at RJ in Vegas. Talk to you there.
Thanks for listening to RJ Bell's Dream Preview. Catch the Wise Guy Roundtable each week. College football released on Wednesday, NFL on Thursday. Don't miss any winners. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Visit podcastone.com and download the Podcast One app. Have a question for RJ? You can contact him directly on Twitter at RJ in Vegas. Live the dream with us each week.
Hi there, my name is Susie Schuster.
And I'm Rich Eisen.
We're teaming up once again in the studio with our new podcast, Not Just Sports, with Susie Schuster and Rich Eisen on Podcast One Sports.
In case you're wondering what this show's about, sometimes we're not just sports.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
And that we actually like being in each other's company.
We do.
Enough to work together and
I think
have
so.
3 kids.
That's why we haven't spent enough time together that we're sitting here at Podcast One. So we're sportscasters and we're parents, so we'll talk sports and maybe parental guidance will be suggested every now and then.
I would hope so, because this is not an X-rated podcast.
No,
this
that's
is a
correct.
family-friendly podcast.
It is exactly that. So we're just going to be hanging out, talking sports and other stuff.
And I will try to educate you on all things in the NFL, because,
Thank
of
you.
course, behind every great man is a greater woman.
That's correct.
There you go.
Join us every Wednesday exclusively on Podcast One.
Subscribe today if you know it's good for you on Apple Podcasts or at podcastone.com, or download it on the new Podcast One app.
Have you heard Spike's Car Radio here on Podcast One? It's comedian, actor, and writer Spike Ferrison sitting on the porch in Malibu talking to his famous friends about cars.
My first guest is Jerry Seinfeld. He's right here. He was all right. Don't try to hug him.
Or Chris Hardwick.
I could feel everything on the road. I mean, it was basically like unprotected sex for driving.
Jeremy Piven.
You know what? I think you and Jerry are spiritually tied to cars, and I respect it and I love it, but I don't quite get it yet, but I want to get it.
Other past guests include Jason Bateman, Russell Peters, and even Adam Carolla.
Mr. Adam just Carolla. Go with the Queen. I mean, the King role has been filled, but the Queen vacancy's
You're
open.
the Queen of all media.
Get new episodes every Wednesday at podcastone.com, on the new Podcast One app, or at Apple Podcasts. And if you like Spike's show, check out our other car shows like CarCast with Adam Carolla, Everyday Driver, or Shift and Steer, exclusively on Podcast One.
It's fall at JCPenney. Time to refresh your closet. This Thursday through Monday, get Levi's lowest prices of the season on 514 straight fit jeans for guys, $36.99. And select Arizona booties for her for $35.99. Plus, save an additional 50% off clearance prices already reduced by 60 to 80%. And get an extra $10 off with your coupon. Hurry in now. JCPenney. Coupon valid 10/5 to 10/9. Levi's and other brands excluded from coupon. Clearance elections vary by store while supplies last. Savings off regular and original prices. Intermediate markdowns may have been taken. See store or jcp.com for details. Season refers to 9/27 to 10/18.